Ethan Cole never thought a crumpled note from his son would change his life, or that the woman who chased him out of the building would become the reason he believed in the future again. Tonight, a single father working as a janitor will walk into an interview he doesn't belong in, face cold rejection, and discover that his worth was never about what others saw, but about his refusal to beg. Stay with this story until the very end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me tell you about the night everything started to change. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting sterile blue across rows of empty cubicles. Ethan Cole pushed his cleaning cart down the 14th floor hallway, the wheels squeaking rhythmically against polished tile. It was 2:47 a.m. He'd been on his feet for 6 hours, and the building still had 3 more floors to go. His lower back ached in that familiar way, the kind of pain that had become background noise over the past 4 years. His hands were raw from bleach, the skin around his knuckles cracked and red, despite the cheap lotion he kept in his locker. But these were familiar pains, almost companions at this point. What gnawed at him more, what kept his jaw tight and his stomach knotted, was the phone call he'd gotten earlier that evening, just before clocking in for his shift. "Mr. Cole, we need to discuss your son's treatment plan. The medication we've been using isn't covered under your current insurance tier. Without it, we're looking at complications down the line, serious ones." Ethan had nodded into the phone like the doctor could see him through the speaker, his throat too tight to form words. He'd asked how much. The number the doctor quoted had made his vision blur at the edges, made the break room walls feel like they were closing in. Now, hours later, he was emptying trash bins and wiping down desks in a building that processed more money in a single day than he'd see in 10 years of night shifts. The irony wasn't lost on him. It never was. He turned the corner into the executive wing, the part of the floor where the real decisions got made, where people in $1,000 suits decided the fates of entire departments without ever thinking about the guy who cleaned their coffee stains at 3 in the morning. The hallway here was wider, the carpet thicker, the art on the walls actual paintings instead of corporate stock photos. And there, taped to the glass wall of the main conference room, was a piece of paper. White, official, printed on company letterhead. Ethan stopped mid-stride. His cart drifted forward slightly before the wheel caught on the carpet edge with a soft thud. Internal job posting. Position, client relations. Associate department, corporate accounts. Salary, $62,000 to $75,000. Plus benefits. Ethan stared at the paper. The words seemed to rearrange themselves, to pulse with possibility and impossibility all at once. $62,000. He read the qualifications slowly, his eyes tracking each line like he was trying to decode a foreign language. Bachelor's degree, preferred but not required. 3 years customer service experience. Strong communication skills. Ability to work under pressure and manage multiple client accounts simultaneously. He had none of the degree. He had all of the rest, or at least he thought he did. Customer service from a decade ago, before Jamie was born, before Sarah got sick, before everything in his life became about survival instead of ambition. Communication skills honed through years of talking Jamie through nightmares and negotiating payment plans with billing departments. Working under pressure? That was every single day of his life. For a long moment, Ethan just stood there in the empty hallway, staring at the posting like it was a door he'd never been invited to walk through. The night shift guys didn't apply for jobs like this. They didn't even think about jobs like this. They kept their heads down, did their work, collected their checks, and went home to lives that were always one emergency away from collapse. But the number kept echoing in his head, 62,000. The doctor's voice, clinical and detached, explaining what Jamie needed. His son's labored breathing at night when the asthma medication wasn't quite enough. When Ethan would sit on the edge of the bed and count each inhale, each exhale, praying they'd keep coming steady. Ethan pulled out his phone, the screen cracked in the upper right corner from when he'd dropped it rushing to pick Jamie up from school 3 months ago. He took a picture of the posting, the flash reflecting off the glass. He told himself it was just in case, just to have the information. He told himself he probably wouldn't even look at it again, that this was just a moment of weakness, of impossible hope. But he saved the photo anyway. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of motion and distraction. He cleaned bathrooms on autopilot, emptied recycling bins without really seeing what he was throwing away, mopped hallways while his mind kept circling back to that piece of paper. $62,000. Benefits. A life where he didn't have to choose between Jamie's medication and groceries. A life where one unexpected expense wouldn't send everything crashing down. By the time he clocked out at 6:15 a.m., his body was exhausted, but his mind was racing. He took the bus home through streets just beginning to wake up. Delivery trucks making their rounds, early commuters shuffling toward the subway, the sky shifting from black to gray to the pale gold of dawn. The apartment was still dark when he let himself in. Ethan moved quietly through the cramped living room, setting his keys on the kitchen counter without making a sound. He'd gotten good at being a ghost in his own home over the years, never waking Jamie unless absolutely necessary. The kid needed his sleep, needed every minute of rest he could get. Jamie's door was cracked open, just how he liked it. Ethan stepped inside carefully, his eyes adjusting to the soft glow of the spaceship nightlight in the corner. A gift from Sarah's mother 2 Christmases ago, one of the few things they'd kept from before. Jamie was curled on his side, one hand tucked under his pillow, the other clutching the worn stuffed dog he'd had since he was 2. Ethan's chest tightened the way it always did when he looked at his son like this, peaceful, safe, unaware of how hard Ethan was fighting to keep their world from falling apart. The boy was 7 years old and still looked so impossibly small against the pillow, his dark hair messy, his breathing steady. Ethan knelt beside the bed and brushed a hand over Jamie's forehead. Cool. No fever. That was something. That was everything, really. On the nightstand sat the lineup of necessities that had become Jamie's reality. 3 pill bottles, in different sizes, a blue inhaler with a cartoon astronaut sticker Jamie had put on it himself, and a glass of water that was half empty. Ethan checked the bottles out of habit, making sure the day's doses had been taken. Mrs. Kwan from downstairs had watched Jamie during the night shift. She was kind, patient, never made Ethan feel like he was asking too much, even though he absolutely was. But she was 73 years old and usually fell asleep by 9. The arrangement worked because it had to, not because it was ideal. Ethan hated asking her, hated needing her, hated the whole precarious structure of his life that depended on the kindness of a neighbor who had her own health issues, her own limitations, hated all of it. Jamie stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. His eyes were hazy, still caught between sleep and waking. "Dad?" Ethan's voice came out softer than he intended. "Hey, buddy. Go back to sleep." "You just get home?" "Yeah, just got in." Jamie blinked up at him, trying to focus. "Did you eat dinner?" Ethan smiled despite the exhaustion pulling at every muscle in his body. "I'm fine. You worry too much." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Jamie yawned, a big, jaw-cracking yawn that made him look even younger. "There's mac and cheese in the fridge. Mrs. Kwan made extra. She said you need to eat more." "I'll have some later, promise." The boy's eyes were already drifting shut again, but his hand reached out from under the covers, small fingers searching until they found Ethan's thumb and curled around it. The gesture was so unconscious, so automatic, that it made Ethan's throat close up. "Love you, Dad." Ethan squeezed back gently, carefully, like Jamie was made of glass. "Love you too, buddy." He stayed there until Jamie's breathing evened out into the deep, steady rhythm of real sleep. Then he stood slowly, his knees protesting after hours of kneeling and bending and moving through the building. He slipped out of the room, pulling the door back to its usual crack, and made his way to the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed when he opened it. Inside, the Tupperware container of mac and cheese misses. Kwan had mentioned a half-empty jug of milk that would need replacing in a day or two, store-brand juice boxes for Jamie's lunches, a packet of deli meat that was probably a day past its prime, and half a loaf of bread. Ethan wasn't hungry. He was never hungry anymore. Or maybe he'd just gotten too good at ignoring it. He pulled out his phone and looked at the photo of the job posting again. The words seemed both impossibly far away and dangerously, temptingly close. He opened his email, the ancient app slow to load on his cracked screen. He started typing, then stopped. What was he even doing? He didn't have a real resume. The last resume he'd written was 8 years ago, back when he'd been a different person, back when Sarah was alive and healthy, when they'd had plans and dreams and a future that looked like something other than an endless string of night shifts and medical bills. He didn't have professional references that mattered. The last real job interview he'd done had been for a customer service position at a call center, and he'd been 24 years old, confident in a way he couldn't even remember feeling anymore. He locked his phone and set it on the counter, face down. This was stupid. People like him didn't get jobs like that. The world didn't work that way. You didn't go from emptying trash cans to managing corporate accounts just because you needed the money. Need wasn't enough. Need was never enough. Then he heard a sound from Jamie's room. A faint rustle of movement, the soft creak of bed springs. Ethan frowned and walked back down the narrow hallway. Jamie's door was still cracked. The boy was awake again, sitting up in bed with his back against the wall, scribbling something on a piece of paper with a green crayon from the art supplies they kept in a shoebox under his bed. "Jamie? What are you doing, bud?" The boy looked up, startled, guilt flashing across his face like he'd been caught doing something wrong. "I couldn't sleep." "You need to rest. You've got school in a few hours." "I know. Jamie held up the paper, his expression shifting to something earnest and hopeful. "I made you something." Ethan stepped closer, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. In wobbly letters that showed Jamie's careful effort, the note said, "You're the best dad. You can do anything." Below the words was a drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall with messy hair, one small with a big smile, both of them standing in front of something that might have been their apartment building or might have been a castle. With Jamie's art, it was hard to tell, but the intention was clear. Ethan took the paper, his hands unsteady. "Jamie? Mrs. Kwan said you looked sad yesterday when you dropped me off. I wanted to make you feel better." Ethan crouched down beside the bed so they were eye level, so Jamie could see his face. "I'm not sad, buddy. I'm just tired." "You're always tired." "I know." Jamie looked at him with that serious expression only 7-year-olds could pull off, that unfiltered honesty that adults spent their whole lives learning to hide. "You should do something that makes you happy." Ethan's smile felt thin, stretched across something raw. "What I do makes me happy. Taking care of you. That's everything to me." "But you never smile anymore. Not like you used to." The words hit harder than they should have, harder than anything a child should be able to articulate. Ethan reached out and ruffled Jamie's hair, buying himself a moment to figure out what to say. "I smile all the time. Not real smiles. Not like when Mom was here." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Couldn't find words that wouldn't be a lie or a platitude or something hollow, so he just pulled Jamie into a hug instead, holding him tight until the boy squirmed in that way kids do when affection crosses the line into discomfort. Okay, you're squishing me." Ethan let out a laugh that was more breath than sound and loosened his grip. "Back to sleep. For real this time." "Fine." Jamie flopped back onto his pillow with dramatic flair. "But keep the note. It's good luck." Ethan folded the paper carefully, precisely, and slipped it into his pocket where it rested against his thigh. "I will, I promise." "And Dad? Yeah? Whatever you're worried about, you can do it. I know you can." Ethan's throat went tight. "Get some sleep, buddy." He left the room before Jamie could see his face, before the kid could see how close his father was to completely falling apart. 3 days later, Ethan sent in the application. He didn't tell anyone about it, didn't mention it to Mrs. Kwan or to Davis, the other guy on his shift who sometimes shared cigarettes with him during breaks, even though Ethan had quit smoking 2 years ago. He didn't let himself think about it too hard, didn't build it up into something that could crush him when it inevitably went nowhere. He filled out the online form during his lunch break, sitting in the building's basement break room with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and microwaved food, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead in that maddening way they always did. He attached a resume he'd cobbled together from memory, his years at the janitorial company, a customer service stint from a decade ago that felt like it belonged to a different person entirely, his high school diploma from a school that probably didn't even exist anymore. It felt like shouting into a void, like sending a message in a bottle and watching it sink. He hit submit and immediately regretted it, felt stupid for even trying, felt exposed in a way that made his skin crawl. But a week later, on a Tuesday night while he was mopping the 12th floor lobby, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He almost ignored it. Probably a spam call, probably nothing. But something made him check. Subject: interview invitation, client relations, associate position. Dear Mr. Cole, thank you for your application. We would like to invite you to interview for the client relations associate position. Please confirm your availability for Thursday, October 12th at 10 a.m. Ethan read the email 3 times before the words actually penetrated, 4 times before he believed they were real. He stood there in the middle of the empty lobby, mop in one hand, phone in the other, staring at the screen like it might suddenly reveal itself to be a mistake, a glitch, a cruel joke. You good, man? Ethan looked up. Davis was walking past with a trash bag over his shoulder, heading toward the service elevator. He was in his 50s, had been doing this job for 20 years, and had the permanent stoop of someone who'd spent too long bent over cleaning other people's messes. Yeah, Ethan said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. I'm good. Davis squinted at him, unconvinced. You look like you just saw a ghost. Something like that. Davis shrugged and kept walking. The service elevator dinged. He disappeared inside. Ethan looked back at his phone, at the email that was either an opportunity or a disaster waiting to happen. He typed out a response with shaking thumbs. I'm available. Thank you for the opportunity. Then he sent it before he could change his mind. The next day, Wednesday, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He went shopping for interview clothes. He couldn't afford new, couldn't justify spending money they didn't have on something that might not even matter. So after his shift ended at 6 a.m., he took the bus to a thrift store on the east side of the city, a place he'd passed 100 times but never had reason to enter. The store smelled like mothballs and old fabric softener. The fluorescent lights were harsh and unforgiving, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Racks of clothes stretched in long rows, suits that had belonged to men who'd retired or died, dresses that had hung in closets for decades, shoes that had walked miles in other people's lives. Ethan found a navy blazer that was only slightly too big in the shoulders. The fabric was worn but clean, the buttons intact. He found a pair of gray slacks that fit well enough, though they were a little long. A white dress shirt with a collar that wasn't too frayed. A tie, dark blue with thin silver stripes, that looked professional without trying too hard. At the register, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain rang him up. The total came to $18.47. Ethan paid in cash. Bills he'd been saving in an envelope in the kitchen drawer, money that was supposed to go toward Jamie's next prescription refill. He'd make it work somehow. He always did. He carried the bag home on the bus, the plastic handles cutting into his palm. Outside the window, the city blurred past, buildings and billboards and people living lives he'd never touch. He tried to imagine himself in that blazer, in those slacks, sitting across from people who'd never had to choose between food and medicine. Tried to imagine belonging in that world. It felt impossible. But then again, so did everything else these days. Thursday morning arrived too fast and too slow. Ethan got Jamie up at 6:30, made him breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast because that's what they had, and made sure the boy took his morning medication. He packed Jamie's lunch, checked his backpack twice, reminded him about the math test he had third period. You look fancy, Jamie said, eyeing Ethan's thrift store blazer. I've got that interview today. Remember? Jamie's face lit up. The big job? Maybe. We'll see. You're gonna get it. Ethan knelt down and straightened Jamie's collar. Don't get your hopes up, buddy. This is just practice. You'll get it, Jamie repeated, with the absolute certainty only children could muster. Because you're the best. Ethan pulled him into a quick hug. I love you. Have a good day at school. Love you too, Dad. Good luck. Ethan walked Jamie to the bus stop, waited until he was safely on board, then turned and headed in the opposite direction, toward the building where he'd spent the last 4 years cleaning floors and emptying trash and being invisible. Today, he was going to walk through the front door. The building looked different in daylight, bigger somehow, more intimidating. Ethan had only ever seen it in the dead of night, when it was quiet and empty and belonged to people like him, the cleaners, the security guards, the maintenance crew. Now, in mid-morning, it was alive with activity. People in expensive suits striding through the lobby with purpose, Women in heels clicking across the marble floors, everyone looking like they belonged. Ethan pushed through the revolving door and stepped into a world he'd only ever observed from the margins. The lobby was massive. Marble floors that gleamed under recessed lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows that let in streams of autumn sunlight, a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel, all sleek wood and modern design. Ethan walked up to the desk, his heartbeat loud in his ears. The receptionist looked up, a young woman, maybe 25, with perfect makeup and a smile that was professional and distant in equal measure. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I have an interview. 10 o'clock. Ethan Cole." She glanced at her computer screen, clicked a few times with manicured nails. "Client Relations Associate position? Yes? Perfect. Take the elevator to the 19th floor. Check in with HR when you arrive." "Thank you." Ethan turned and walked toward the bank of elevators, feeling like an imposter in his own skin. Like everyone could tell he didn't belong here, that he was just a night shift worker playing dress-up. The elevator was empty when it arrived. Ethan stepped inside and pressed 19. The doors slid shut. The car rose smoothly, silently, carrying him toward something he couldn't quite name: opportunity or disaster, hope or humiliation. The 19th floor was everything Ethan had expected, and worse. Sleek, modern, expensive. Everything was glass and chrome and carefully designed minimalism. The kind of space that said, "We have money," without needing to say anything at all. He checked in at the HR desk. The woman there handed him a visitor badge and directed him to a waiting area near the conference rooms. Leather chairs, glass coffee table with pristine magazines no one ever read, modern art on the walls that probably cost more than his annual salary. Ethan sat down, his hands folded in his lap. Around him, other candidates waited. A man in an expensive charcoal suit, scrolling through his phone with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. A woman with a leather portfolio, reviewing notes in a leather-bound notebook. Another guy, younger, maybe 30, bouncing his leg impatiently like he had somewhere more important to be. And then there was Ethan, in his thrift store blazer that was slightly too big, in his slacks that were slightly too long, with hands that were still rough from industrial cleaner despite 2 days of aggressive moisturizing. The man across from him glanced over, took in Ethan's outfit with a quick dismissive scan, and looked away without a word. No greeting, no acknowledgement, just a silent assessment that said, "You don't belong here." Ethan's jaw tightened. He pulled Jamie's note from his pocket. He'd brought it with him, folded carefully and tucked into his wallet, and unfolded it on his lap where no one else could see. "You're the best dad. You can do anything." He read it twice, let the words settle, folded it back up and put it away. A door opened down the hall. "Ethan Cole?" He stood, his legs steadier than he'd expected. A woman in her early 30s stepped out, clipboard in hand. She had sharp eyes behind frameless glasses and an expression that gave nothing away. "I'm Rachel Winters. I'll be conducting your interview. Follow me." Ethan nodded and followed her into a conference room. Inside, 2 other people were already seated at the long table, a middle-aged man in a gray suit who looked bored before the interview even started, and a younger woman with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression neutral and assessing. Rachel gestured to a chair across from them. "Have a seat." Ethan sat. His palms were damp. He resisted the urge to wipe them on his pants. Rachel took her seat and glanced at a tablet in front of her. "So, Ethan Cole, you currently work as a custodial technician here in the building, is that correct?" "Yes." "And you're applying for a client-facing role in corporate accounts." It wasn't a question. It was an observation, a quiet judgment hanging in the air between them. Ethan met her eyes. "Yes." The man in the gray suit leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. His wedding ring caught the light. "What made you think you were qualified for this position?" The question was designed to make him defensive. Ethan recognized it immediately. The subtle condescension, the implication that he'd made a mistake even applying. He kept his voice steady. "I read the posting. I meet most of the qualifications listed. I've worked in customer service before. I'm reliable. I work well under pressure." The woman with the bun raised an eyebrow. "Customer service from 10 years ago. And since then, you've been cleaning?" I've been raising my son, Ethan said. The words came out harder than he'd intended, sharper. The room went quiet for a beat too long. Rachel looked down at her notes, her pen tapping against the tablet. It says here you don't have a degree. No, I don't. Most of our client relations team has at least a bachelor's degree. Several have MBAs. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand that. So help me understand, the man in the gray suit said, his tone flat and dismissive. Why should we consider you over candidates who do have those qualifications? Over people who've spent years preparing for exactly this kind of role? Ethan's hands tightened on the armrests of his chair. He could feel it now, the wall they'd already built. The decision they'd made before he even walked in. This wasn't really an interview. It was a formality, a box to check. He thought about Jamie, about the doctor's bill sitting on his kitchen counter, about the way his son had looked at him that morning and said, with absolute faith, "You're going to get it." He thought about the note in his pocket. He took a breath. Because qualifications on paper don't tell you how someone handles a crisis at 2 a.m. when everything's falling apart and there's no one else to call, Ethan said. They don't tell you if someone knows how to listen when a person is frustrated and scared and just needs someone to actually hear them. I've spent 4 years in this building. I've seen how things work here. I've watched people at their best and their worst. I know what it takes to keep things running when no one else is looking. He paused, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I'm not asking you to lower your standards. I'm asking you to see that experience comes in more than one form. That the person who can solve a problem at 3 a.m. with no resources and no backup might be exactly who you need when a client calls in a panic and needs someone who won't just follow a script. The room was silent. Rachel's pen had stopped moving. The man in the suit exchanged a glance with the woman in the bun. She didn't look impressed. Rachel clicked her pen once, twice. We'll be in touch, Mr. Cole. Ethan's heart sank. He knew that tone, had heard it 100 times in 100 different contexts. We'll be in touch meant, don't hold your breath. He stood, forcing himself to meet their eyes. Thank you for your time. No one responded. No one stood. No one shook his hand. He walked out of the room, his chest tight, his face burning with the particular humiliation of knowing you'd failed before you'd even really begun. He made it to the elevator, pressed the button, waited. The doors opened. He stepped inside. And just before they closed, he heard a voice behind him. Wait. Ethan turned. A woman was walking toward him, tall, dark-haired, mid-20s, dressed in a charcoal blazer and fitted pants that said, I belong here without trying. Her stride was confident, purposeful. She stopped just outside the elevator, studying him with sharp, curious eyes. You're Ethan Cole? Yeah. She extended a hand. I'm Lena Hart. I just got hired, starting Monday. Ethan shook her hand, confused by the interruption, by her presence. Congratulations. Thanks. I was in the waiting area earlier. I heard part of your interview. His stomach turned. Great. An audience for his humiliation. Look, he said quietly, pressing the door open button. I don't need... You were right, Lena said, cutting him off cleanly. What you said in there, about experience coming in more than one form, about knowing how to handle things when they fall apart. Ethan blinked. I've got the degree, Lena continued, her voice matter of fact. I've got the resume that looks perfect on paper. I've got the internships and the references and the whole package. But I've also seen a lot of people who look good in an interview and completely fall apart the second something doesn't go according to their carefully prepared script. She tilted her head slightly, still watching him. You didn't beg them to see your value. You didn't grovel or make excuses. You just stated what you bring. That takes guts. Ethan didn't know what to say. Didn't know if this was pity or genuine respect or something else entirely. Lena glanced back down the hallway toward the conference rooms, then looked at him again. They're not going to call you. I know. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I think they're making a mistake. Appreciate that. Ethan stepped back into the elevator fully. But it is what it is. The doors began to close. Ethan. He looked up. Lena was still standing there, something unreadable in her expression. Not pity, but something softer, more genuine. Don't give up. I mean it. The doors shut. Ethan leaned against the elevator wall and closed his eyes, letting out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his lungs for the last 30 minutes. He wasn't sure if he wanted to scream or cry or just go home and sleep for 12 hours straight. Instead, he pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Kwan. "Interview done. I'll pick up Jamie after school. Thank you for everything." She replied immediately. "How did it go?" Ethan stared at the message, then typed, "Not sure. We'll see." He didn't go straight home. Instead, he walked. Blocks and blocks through the city, hands shoved deep in his pockets, Jamie's note pressed against his chest through the fabric of his shirt. He walked past coffee shops where people sat with laptops and lattes, past boutiques with window displays that cost more than his rent, past parks where young mothers pushed strollers and looked like they'd never worried about money a day in their lives. By the time he made it back to the apartment, it was almost 3 in the afternoon. Jamie wouldn't be home from school for another hour. The apartment was quiet, still, unchanged. The breakfast dishes were still in the sink. Jamie's backpack hook by the door was empty. The note on the fridge, a reminder about Jamie's next doctor's appointment, stared at him. Ethan sat down on the couch and stared at the ceiling, at the water stain in the corner that he kept meaning to check on, but never had time to actually address. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, expecting a spam call or maybe a message from Mrs. Kwan. It was an email. From Lena Hart. Subject: One more thing. Ethan opened it, confused. "I don't know if this helps, but I meant what I said outside the elevator. You've got something most people spend years trying to fake. Actual integrity and real problem-solving instinct. If this door didn't open, another one will. Keep walking through them. Don't let today make you smaller. Lena P.S. I'm serious about the not giving up part." Ethan read it twice, then a third time. Then he set his phone down, pulled out Jamie's note one more time, and unfolded it on his lap. "You're the best dad. You can do anything." He didn't feel like he could do anything, but maybe, just maybe, he could survive this. Could wake up tomorrow and keep trying. Could be the person Jamie believed he was, even when he didn't believe it himself. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that had to be enough. For 3 days, Ethan didn't check his email. Not obsessively, anyway. He'd glance at his phone during breaks, scroll through the spam and the automated reminders about bills due, but he didn't let himself sit there refreshing his inbox every 5 minutes like some desperate kid waiting for college acceptance letters. He went back to work, back to the night shift, back to the rhythm of mops and trash bags and fluorescent lights that hummed their endless, monotonous song. He told himself the interview had been a learning experience, nothing more. A momentary lapse in judgment where he'd let hope creep in through a crack in his armor. People like him didn't get jobs like that. The world didn't work that way. You didn't leap from custodial work to corporate accounts just because you needed the money, or because your kid believed in you, or because some woman you'd never met before sent you an encouraging email. But Jamie's note stayed in his wallet, tucked behind his expired insurance card, and the photo of Sarah he couldn't bring himself to remove. And Lena's email stayed undeleted, sitting in his inbox like a small light he couldn't quite extinguish. On the 4th day, his phone rang during his lunch break. He was sitting in the basement break room, eating a sandwich he'd made that morning, peanut butter and jelly, because that's what they had, when the screen lit up with an unknown number. Ethan almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers were never good news. They were debt collectors or telemarketers, or automated systems telling him his car warranty was expiring on a car he didn't own. But something made him swipe to accept. "Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Rachel Winters from Hastings and Grove." His heart stopped. Actually stopped, then kicked back into gear with a painful thud against his ribs. "Yes, hi. We'd like to invite you back for a second interview." Her voice was crisp, professional, giving nothing away. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Are you available?" Ethan's mind went completely blank. Yes, I'm available." "Good, same floor. Ask for me at the desk." She hung up before he could say anything else. No pleasantries, no explanation, just the information delivered efficiently, and then silence. Ethan sat there in the break room, staring at his phone like it had just spoken in tongues. The sandwich sat forgotten on the table in front of him, one bite taken out of it. Davis walked in, heading for the vending machine. He fed $1 into the slot, punched the button for a Coke. The can tumbled down with a metallic clank. "You good, man?" Davis asked, cracking open the can. You look weird. Yeah, Ethan said slowly, still staring at his phone. I think so. Davis took a long drink, eyeing him. You sure? You look like somebody just told you the building's haunted. Just got some unexpected news. Good news or bad news? I don't know yet. Davis shrugged and headed toward the door. Well, whatever it is, don't let it mess up your shift. We got 3 floors to finish before morning. Yeah, I know. The door swung shut behind Davis. Ethan set his phone down on the table and picked up his sandwich. He took another bite, but he couldn't taste it. Couldn't focus on anything except the impossible fact that they'd called him back. Second interviews meant something. Meant they were actually considering him. Meant he hadn't completely embarrassed himself in that conference room. Or maybe it meant they wanted to reject him in person. Maybe Rachel had a sadistic streak and enjoyed watching people squirm. Ethan finished his sandwich on autopilot, threw away the plastic bag, and went back to work. But his mind was somewhere else entirely, running through scenarios, imagining conversations, trying to prepare for something he had no idea how to prepare for. The next day, Ethan walked back into the building at 1:45 p.m., wearing the same thrift store blazer, the same 2 long slacks, the same tie he'd watched a YouTube tutorial to learn how to knot properly. This time his hands weren't shaking. This time he knew what to expect, or at least he thought he did. The 19th floor looked exactly the same. Sleek glass and chrome, expensive minimalism, the kind of design that whispered wealth without shouting it. The HR desk, the leather chairs, the modern art that probably cost more than Ethan made in 6 months. Rachel met him at the desk, her expression unreadable behind those frameless glasses. Follow me. She didn't make small talk, didn't ask how he was doing or comment on the weather, just turned and walked, expecting him to keep up. She led him down a different hallway this time, toward a corner office, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. The view was stunning, buildings stretching toward the horizon, the river winding through downtown, bridges like delicate threads connecting one side to the other. Inside the office, a man in his 50s sat behind a massive desk made of dark wood and glass. He was reviewing something on his computer, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. He looked up when they entered, and Ethan recognized him immediately from the company website he'd looked at when he first applied. Richard Hastings, the founder, the owner, the man whose name was literally on the building. Mr. Cole, Hastings said, standing and extending a hand across the desk. His grip was firm, assured. I'm Richard Hastings. I own this company. Ethan shook his hand, trying to keep his voice steady. Nice to meet you, sir. Sit. Ethan sat. The chair was leather, expensive, the kind that probably cost more than everything in his apartment combined. Hastings leaned back in his own chair, fingers steepled in front of him like he was conducting an orchestra. I read the notes from your first interview. Rachel here wasn't impressed. Ethan glanced at Rachel, who stood near the door with her tablet, her face giving nothing away. But, Hastings continued, his eyes sharp and assessing, she also said you didn't fold when they pushed you, that you held your ground without getting defensive. That interested me. I appreciate the opportunity to come back, Ethan said carefully, not sure where this was going. Don't appreciate it yet. Hastings pulled up something on his computer screen, squinting at it briefly before looking back at Ethan. I'm going to be direct with you, Mr. Cole. You don't have the background we usually look for. You don't have the education. You don't have the polish or the network or the pedigree. And frankly, on paper, you look like someone who took a wrong turn on the way to the break room. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his mouth shut. Let the man talk. That said, Hastings went on, leaning forward slightly, I didn't build this company by hiring people who looked good in meetings and fell apart when things got complicated. I built it by hiring people who could actually solve problems, people who didn't need their hands held, people who gave a damn. He fixed Ethan with a stare that felt like it could see straight through him. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a scenario. You're going to tell me how you'd handle it. No bullshit, no corporate speak, just your answer. Clear? Clear. Hastings pulled up a file on his screen, scrolled through it briefly. We have a client, mid-sized tech firm, been with us for 6 years. Last quarter, they overpaid on their contract by about $40,000 due to an error on our end. Our accounting department caught it 2 weeks ago. The client hasn't noticed yet. He looked at Ethan. What do you do? Ethan didn't hesitate. You tell them. Even though they haven't noticed? Especially because they haven't noticed. Hastings raised an eyebrow. Explain. If you don't tell them and they find out later, and they will find out, someone always finds out, you've lost their trust. Maybe forever. But if you come to them proactively, own the mistake, and fix it before they even know there's a problem, you've shown them you're honest, that you value the relationship more than $40,000. That's worth more in the long run. Hastings studied him for a long moment, his expression giving nothing away. Then, slowly, he smiled. Rachel, what do you think? Rachel's expression didn't change. I think he's either very smart or very naive. Sometimes those are the same thing. Hastings stood, walking around the desk to lean against the front of it, arms crossed. Mr. Cole, I'm not offering you the job yet, but I'm not saying no either. Here's what I want. I want you to come back Monday. Shadow our team for the day. See how you handle the real thing when it's not a hypothetical scenario in my office. Ethan blinked. You want me to work a day? Unpaid, Rachel added quickly. Consider it a final interview. An audition. Hastings extended his hand again. If you can keep up, if you can prove you belong here, we'll talk numbers. If you can't, no hard feelings. You walk away with some experience, and I walk away knowing I gave you a fair shot. Deal? Ethan stood and shook his hand, his mind racing. Deal. I'll be here. 8:45. Don't be late. I won't. When Ethan left the office, his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might crack a rib. He made it to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited, trying to process what had just happened. The doors opened. Lena Hart stepped out. She stopped when she saw him, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. Ethan? Lena. She looked him up and down, a slow smile spreading across her face. You came back. They called me. Second interview. I know. She stepped aside to let him into the elevator, then leaned against the wall beside him as the doors closed, sealing them in together. I may have mentioned your name to Hastings after your first interview. Ethan turned to look at her, genuinely shocked. You what? I told him he'd be an idiot not to give you a real shot, that the people who look perfect on paper are usually the ones who crumble under actual pressure. She shrugged, like it was no big deal. He doesn't listen to me often. I'm new, I don't have political capital yet, but apparently he did this time. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Lena met his eyes, her expression serious now. Because I don't like watching good people get overlooked just because they don't fit the mold. Because I've seen too many mediocre people succeed just because they knew the right words to say. And because what you said in that interview was real, not rehearsed, not calculated, just honest. She paused. That's rare. The elevator descended in silence for a few floors. Ethan didn't know what to say. Thank you felt inadequate. Anything else felt too much. Thank you? He said anyway. Really? Lena smiled. Don't thank me yet. Monday's going to be brutal. Rachel doesn't go easy on anyone, and the team's not exactly welcoming to outsiders. They're going to test you. Hard. I'll manage. I believe you. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors slid open. Lena stepped out first, then turned back. Hey, you want to grab coffee? I've got 20 minutes before my next meeting. Ethan hesitated, his first instinct to decline. I don't want to take up your time. I'm offering. That means I want to. She tilted her head. Come on, there's a place 2 blocks from here. My treat. They walked to a small cafe tucked between a dry cleaner and a used bookstore. The kind of place that had mismatched chairs and local art on the walls, and a chalkboard menu that changed daily. Lena ordered an espresso. Ethan got black coffee because it was the cheapest thing on the menu, and he wasn't going to let her pay for more than that. They sat by the window, afternoon light slanting across the table, catching the steam rising from their cups. So, Lena said, stirring her espresso with a tiny spoon, tell me about your son. Ethan looked up, surprised. How did you mentioned him in the interview, raising him on your own. Right, yeah. Ethan wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, feeling the heat seep into his palms. His name's Jamie. He's 7. What's he like? Smart. Too smart sometimes, if that makes sense. He asks questions I don't know how to answer. He worries about me more than any 7-year-old should. Lena smiled softly. Sounds like he takes after you. I hope not. I don't want him to grow up feeling like the world's on his shoulders. Why do you say that? Ethan stared into his coffee, watching the dark surface ripple slightly when he moved the cup. Because I don't want him to spend his life feeling like he's not enough, like he has to prove he deserves to take up space. The words came out before he could stop them, before he could filter or soften or deflect. Just raw honesty spilling across the table between them. Lena didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was quieter than before. Is that how you feel? Most days, yeah. Even after what you said in that interview? That took courage, Ethan. Real courage. Most people would have just nodded along and hoped for the best. You stood your ground. Most people are smarter than me. They know when to back down. Lena laughed, but it wasn't mean. I seriously doubt that. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since they'd sat down. She was younger than him, probably by 5 or 6 years. Late 20s, polished in a way he'd never be, with the kind of confidence that came from success and education and never having to wonder if you could afford groceries and medicine in the same week. But there was something else there too. Something underneath the polish that didn't quite fit the corporate image she projected. Why'd you help me? He asked. The real reason. Lena took a sip of her espresso, considering the question. You want the honest answer? Yeah. Because I used to be you. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? I grew up in a town where people like me didn't get opportunities. My mom cleaned houses 6 days a week. My dad worked construction until his back gave out when I was 14. We lived in a trailer park where half the homes had mold problems and the other half had worse. She set her cup down carefully. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I only managed that because I got a full-ride scholarship. Even then, I showed up on campus and felt like everyone could tell I didn't belong, like I was wearing a costume. But you made it, Ethan said. You're here now? Yeah, I made it. But I didn't do it alone, and I didn't do it by pretending I was someone I wasn't. Lena leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant for a moment. There was a professor who took a chance on me sophomore year. Gave me a research assistant position when I had no business getting it. Wrote me recommendation letters. Told me I was good enough when I was ready to drop out and go home. She refocused on Ethan. I don't want to be the kind of person who forgets what that felt like, who climbs the ladder and then pulls it up behind them. So when you saw me walk out of that interview, I saw someone who didn't let the room make him small, someone who kept his dignity even when they'd already decided he wasn't worth their time. And I thought, that's someone who deserves a shot. Ethan didn't know what to say. His throat felt tight. Lena checked her watch and stood. I have to get back. But I'll see you Monday, right? Yeah, I'll be there. She smiled, and it was genuine, warm. Good. Don't be late. And Ethan? Yeah? You've got this. I mean it. She left, weaving through the tables toward the door, leaving Ethan sitting there with his half-finished coffee and a feeling in his chest he couldn't quite name. Something lighter than he'd felt in years. That weekend felt longer than usual. Ethan tried to prepare for Monday, researched the company more thoroughly, read articles about client relations strategies, practiced answers to potential questions in the bathroom mirror until he felt ridiculous and stopped. On Saturday afternoon, he told Jamie about the opportunity. They were sitting at the kitchen table, Jamie working on a math worksheet while Ethan nursed a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Dad? Yeah, bud? Are you going to get the job? Ethan set his cup down. I don't know yet. Monday's kind of a test. Jamie looked up from his worksheet, pencil poised mid-problem. What kind of test? They want to see if I can actually do the work, if I can keep up with people who've been doing this for years. Jamie nodded seriously, like this made perfect sense. You can. How do you know? Jamie shrugged, going back to his math. Because you're my dad. You can do anything. It's not that simple, Jamie. There are people who are better at this than me. People who went to school for it. People who know things I don't. But you're smart. Not like them. So? Jamie looked up again, his expression so earnest it hurt. You're still smart. You help me with homework. You fix stuff when it breaks. You know lots of things. Ethan reached over and ruffled the boy's hair, feeling that familiar ache in his chest. You've got more faith in me than I have in myself. That's because I'm right and you're wrong. Ethan laughed despite himself. Finish your homework, smartass. You said a bad word. And you're not going to tell Mrs. Kwan, are you? Jamie grinned. Maybe. Depends on if you help me with number 7. Monday came faster than Ethan wanted and slower than he could stand. He dropped Jamie off at school early, made sure the boy had his inhaler and his lunch and his homework folder. He took the bus downtown, watching the city wake up around him. Delivery trucks, early commuters, the sky shifting from gray to pale blue. He walked into the building at 8:42 a.m. and checked in at the 19th floor. Rachel met him at the desk, looking exactly as put together as she had every other time he'd seen her. "You're early," she said, and it didn't sound like a compliment. "Didn't want to risk being late." "Good, follow me." She led him into a large open office space where a dozen people sat at desks arranged in clusters. Phones were ringing, keyboards clicking, conversations happening in low, urgent tones. The energy was sharp and fast, everyone moving like they were perpetually 2 steps behind where they needed to be. Rachel stopped at a desk near the back where a woman in her 30s sat, typing rapidly while talking on the phone wedged between her shoulder and ear. She looked up when they approached, finishing her sentence before putting the caller on hold. "This is Vanessa Chen," Rachel said. "She's lead on the Drake Media account. You'll be shadowing her today." Vanessa's smile was thin and didn't reach her eyes. "Great. Another trainee." "He's not a trainee," Rachel corrected. "He's being evaluated. There's a difference." "Right." Vanessa turned back to her computer, clicking her mouse with sharp, precise movements. "Well, Mr. Cole, welcome to the deep end. Keep up or don't. I'm not slowing down for you." "Understood," Ethan said. Rachel left without another word, her heels clicking against the floor as she disappeared back toward her office. Vanessa finished her call, made 3 notes in a spreadsheet, sent 2 emails, and only then looked at Ethan again. "You know anything about client relations?" "Some. I've done customer service before." "This isn't customer service. This is relationship management, crisis prevention, revenue protection. You're not solving problems after they happen. You're making sure they don't happen in the first place." She stood, grabbing a tablet from her desk. "Drake Media is a $7 million account. They've been with us for 4 years. My job is to make sure year 5 happens. Your job today is to watch, learn, and stay out of my way unless I specifically ask for input. Questions?" "No." "Good." The morning was a whirlwind. Vanessa moved fast, calls with clients, internal strategy meetings, email chains that seemed to multiply like rabbits, spreadsheets that tracked everything from contract renewal dates to the client contact's birthday. She didn't explain much, just expected Ethan to absorb it through osmosis. He took notes on his phone, asked questions when he could find breaks in her workflow, tried not to look completely lost. By noon, his head was spinning. "Lunch is 30 minutes, Vanessa said, standing and grabbing her purse. "Be back at your desk by 12:30 sharp." Ethan nodded. He found Lena in the break room, heating up something that smelled amazing in the microwave. She looked up when he walked in and smiled. "Surviving?" "Barely. Vanessa's intense," Lena laughed. "That's putting it mildly, but she's good, really good. If you can keep up with her, you can handle anything this company throws at you." "I'm not sure I'm keeping up." "You're still here. That counts for something." She pulled her food out of the microwave, some kind of pasta with vegetables, and sat down at the small table. "You look stressed." Ethan leaned against the counter. "I keep waiting for someone to figure out I have no idea what I'm doing. That's called imposter syndrome. Everyone feels it. Even you?" "Especially me. Every single day." Lena took a bite of her pasta, chewed thoughtfully. "I've got the degree, the resume, the internships, all the boxes checked. But half the time I'm just hoping no one notices I'm making it up as I go." That's hard to believe. It's true. Confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about being okay with figuring it out as you go. Nobody has all the answers, Ethan. The people who look like they do are just better at faking it. Ethan smiled despite himself. That's terrible advice. And yet, here I am, employed and semi-successful. She grinned. You're going to be fine. I promise. At 12:27, Ethan was back at Vanessa's desk, waiting. She arrived at 12:29, coffee in hand, and looked mildly surprised to see him already there. Punctual, that's a start. The afternoon was worse than the morning. A client called, someone from Drake Media, furious about a billing discrepancy. Vanessa handled it with surgical precision, her voice calm and controlled, even as the person on the other end shouted loud enough that Ethan could hear them from 3 feet away. She didn't apologize, didn't grovel, just acknowledged the concern and promised to investigate and call back within 2 hours. When she hung up, she turned to Ethan. "What would you have done differently?" Ethan thought about it. "I would have apologized first, then asked what happened." "I didn't apologize. I noticed." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "And you think that was a mistake?" "I think it might have de-escalated faster, made them feel heard." "Interesting take." She studied him for a moment. "Apologizing too soon makes you look weak, makes them think you're admitting fault before you even know what happened. Or it makes you look human, like you actually care that they're upset." Vanessa's expression shifted, just slightly, like she was recalibrating her assessment of him. "Maybe. Depends on the client." She turned back to her computer. "Let's find out what actually happened before we debate strategy." They spent the next 90 minutes digging through billing records, cross-referencing invoices, tracking down the source of the discrepancy. It turned out to be a simple data entry error. Someone had input the wrong account code, resulting in a charge that shouldn't have been there. Small mistake, big impact. Vanessa called the client back at exactly 2 hours, just like she'd promised. She explained what happened, owned the error without over-apologizing, and offered a credit on their next invoice. The client, still annoyed but mollified, agreed. When she hung up, Vanessa leaned back in her chair. "Not bad for your first crisis." "I didn't do anything." "You didn't panic. You stayed focused. You asked good questions." She almost smiled. "You did better than I expected." "That's not exactly high praise." "For me it is." Vanessa stood, gathering her things. It was nearly 5 o'clock. "Rachel wants to see you before you leave. Her office is down the hall, third door on the right." Ethan found Rachel in a small glass-walled office, typing furiously on her laptop. She looked up when he knocked on the door frame. "Come in. Close the door." He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. Rachel closed her laptop with a decisive click. "Sit." Ethan sat. Rachel leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled in front of her face. "Vanessa says you didn't embarrass yourself." "I'll take that as a win." "You should. She's not easy to impress." Rachel pulled up something on her tablet, scrolled through it briefly. "So, what did you think? Was today what you expected?" "It was harder than it looks from the outside." "Good answer. Means you were paying attention." She set the tablet down. "Here's where we are. Hastings wants to offer you a probationary position. 3 months. Salary starts at $35,000, with benefits kicking in after 60 days. If you make it through probation without screwing up too badly, we'll bump you to the full salary range and make it permanent." Ethan's heart stopped, completely stopped, then started again, too fast, too hard. "You're serious?" "I don't joke about hiring." Rachel's expression didn't change. "But let me be clear about what you're signing up for. You're going to be the lowest person on the ladder. Vanessa's going to work you into the ground. The rest of the team is going to test you, push you, see if you break. And if you screw up, if you miss a deadline, lose a client, make a mistake that costs us money, you're out. No second chances. No appeals. Just out." "I understand." "Do you?" Because a lot of people think they understand until they're actually in it. Until they're working 60-hour weeks and getting yelled at by clients and wondering why they ever thought this was a good idea. Ethan met her eyes. "I've worked night shifts for 4 years while raising a kid on my own. I've made decisions at 3 a.m. when there was no one to call for help. I've kept things together when everything was falling apart. This is hard, but it's not harder than that." Rachel studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Good. Start next Monday, 8 a.m. sharp." Ethan stood, his legs steadier than he'd expected. "I won't let you down." "We'll see." He made it to the elevator before the reality of what just happened hit him like a physical force. He had a job, a real job, with a salary that was more than double what he'd been making, with benefits that would cover Jamie's medication, his doctor visits, maybe even set aside a little for emergencies. The doors opened. Lena was inside, heading down. She saw his face and grinned immediately. They offered, didn't they? Yeah. 3-month probation, but yeah. Congratulations, Ethan. Really. She looked genuinely happy for him, not jealous or competitive, just pleased. Ethan laughed, the sound half disbelief, half relief. I can't believe this is real. Believe it. You earned it. They rode down together in comfortable silence. When they reached the lobby, they walked outside into the cool evening air. The sun was setting, painting the buildings gold and orange. Hey, Lena said, turning to face him. You want to grab dinner? Celebrate? Ethan hesitated, his first instinct still to decline. I should get home. Jamie's waiting, and Mrs. Kwan is probably expecting you to be late after a day like this. Come on, just an hour. My treat. You can bring Jamie if you want. I'd actually like to meet him. Ethan looked at her, at the genuine invitation in her eyes, at the way she was looking at him like he was someone worth celebrating. Okay, he said. Yeah, let's do it. They ended up at a diner 6 blocks from Ethan's apartment, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and laminated menus and waitresses who called everyone hun. Jamie sat across from Lena, his eyes wide with curiosity and the barely contained energy of a 7-year-old who'd been in school all day. So you work with my dad now? Jamie asked, stirring his chocolate milk with a straw. I do, Lena said, smiling at him. Is he good at it? He's going to be really good at it. Jamie nodded seriously, like this confirmed something he already knew. He's good at everything. Ethan laughed. I'm really not, bud. Yes, you are, Jamie insisted. He turned back to Lena. He fixes things when they break. He helps me with homework even when he's tired. He makes the best grilled cheese. Lena's expression softened. Those are pretty important skills. They ordered burgers and fries and milkshakes. Jamie talked Lena's ear off about school, about the science project he was working on, about the book he was reading about space exploration. Ethan watched them, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. When the check came, Lena grabbed it before Ethan could even reach for his wallet. I've got it, she said firmly. You don't have to. I know, I want to. Consider it a congratulations gift. Outside the diner, Jamie yawned hugely. The sun had set completely now, the streetlights flickering on one by one. Lena crouched down to Jamie's level. It was really nice to meet you, Jamie. You too. Jamie looked up at his dad, then back at Lena. I like her, Dad. Ethan's face flushed. Jamie, Lena laughed, standing up. I like you too, kid. She met Ethan's eyes. See you Monday? Yeah, Monday. Don't be late. I won't. She walked away, hands in her pockets, and Ethan watched her go until she turned the corner and disappeared. Jamie slipped his hand into Ethan's. Dad? Yeah, bud? I think things are going to get better now. Ethan squeezed his hand, looking down at his son's upturned face. Yeah, Jamie, I think you might be right. They walked home slowly, taking the long way, Jamie chattering about everything and nothing while Ethan listened and tried to memorize this moment, this feeling of things finally starting to work out. The first week was hell disguised as opportunity. Ethan showed up every morning at 7:45, 15 minutes early, coffee already in his system from the cup he'd made at home because the building's coffee cost $4, and that was half of Jamie's lunch money. He left every night after 6, sometimes closer to 7, his brain fried and his body running on fumes. Vanessa threw him into the deep end without a life raft. Client calls where he was expected to take notes and catch details she'd reference later without warning. Data entry that seemed simple until he realized one wrong number could cascade into a billing disaster. Report drafting where every word mattered because clients would read between the lines, looking for reasons to be unhappy. Email chains that looped back on themselves like some kind of corporate Mobius strip, impossible to follow and even harder to contribute to meaningfully. He made mistakes. Small ones mostly. A misspelled client name in a brief that Vanessa caught before it went out. A miscalculated figure in a spreadsheet that would have been embarrassing if she hadn't double-checked his work. Each time she corrected him with surgical precision, her tone neutral but her meaning crystal clear. Do better. And he did. He had to. By the end of the second week, he'd stopped needing her to repeat instructions. By the third, he was anticipating problems before they materialized, noticing patterns in client behavior, flagging potential issues in contracts before they became actual issues. It wasn't brilliance or natural talent, it was survival instinct honed over years of keeping a household running on nothing but willpower and duct tape. This was just a different kind of chaos, but chaos he could learn to navigate. Lena checked in on him when she could. A quick coffee in the break room between meetings. A text during lunch asking if he'd eaten anything besides vending machine snacks. Once, she stopped by his desk at 3 in the afternoon with a protein bar and a bottle of water. "You look like you haven't eaten today," she said, setting them down beside his keyboard. "I had coffee." "Coffee isn't food. It's fuel." "Ethan," she gave him a look that was half concerned, half exasperated. "Eat the damn protein bar." He unwrapped it, too tired to argue. "Thanks." "Don't mention it." She leaned against the edge of his desk, arms crossed. "How's it going with Vanessa?" "She hates me." "She doesn't hate you, she just doesn't trust you yet." "What's the difference?" Lena smiled. "With her? Not much, but you're doing fine. Better than fine, actually." "Doesn't feel like it." "It never does." She glanced over her shoulder as Vanessa walked past, coffee cup in hand, shooting them a look that clearly said, "This isn't a social club." Lena straightened and lowered her voice. "I should go, but seriously, you're doing great. Don't let the learning curve psych you out." "Easy for you to say." "No, it's not, but I'm saying it anyway." On Friday of the third week, everything went sideways. Ethan was at his desk, reviewing a contract renewal for a client Vanessa had handed off to him that morning. His first solo review, which felt both like a vote of confidence and a test he couldn't afford to fail, when Vanessa's phone rang. She answered on the second ring, her expression shifting from neutral to tense in the span of 3 seconds. "When did this happen?" she said into the phone, her voice clipped. A pause while whoever was on the other end answered. "No, don't do anything. Don't send anything. I'll handle it. I'll call you back in 20 minutes. She hung up and stood, grabbing her blazer from the back of her chair with sharp, precise movements. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, already closing the contract file. "Pembroke Industries. They just found out we've been overbilling them for 6 months." Her jaw was tight, her face pale in a way Ethan had never seen before. His stomach dropped. "How much?" $120,000. Jesus. Oh, Vanessa shot him a look, half warning, half agreement. "I need you to pull every invoice we've sent them since March. Cross-reference each one with the contract terms we negotiated. I need to know exactly where the discrepancy is, how it happened, and how we fix it before I call them back." "When do you need it?" "An hour ago." She was already moving toward the door. "I'm going to brief Rachel. You start digging." She left. Ethan stared at his computer screen for exactly 3 seconds, then opened the client database and started pulling files. The invoices were a mess. Different formatting across different months, line items that referenced internal codes without explanation, notes in the margins that referenced conversations no one had properly documented. Ethan started building a spreadsheet from scratch, isolating every charge, every line item, comparing each one methodically against the contract terms Vanessa had negotiated 18 months ago. 30 minutes in, his eyes were burning. 45 minutes in, he found it. A billing code had been applied incorrectly in March. Instead of charging Pembroke for Tier 2 service hours, the level they'd contracted for, they'd been billed at Tier 1 rates, which were nearly double. And because invoicing was partially automated, the error had been replicated month after month, compounding like interest on a loan nobody wanted. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. He double-checked the math, triple-checked it, ran the numbers 4 different ways to make sure he wasn't seeing patterns that weren't there. He was right. The error was clear, documented, undeniable. He stood and walked to Vanessa's office. She was on the phone, her voice clipped and professional in that way that meant she was barely holding on to her composure. "I understand your frustration, Mr. Pembroke, completely. I'm looking into it right now and I will have answers for you shortly." Ethan knocked on the doorframe. She glanced up, irritation flashing across her face until she saw his expression. He mouthed, "I found it." Vanessa's eyes sharpened. She held up one finger. "Wait. Mr. Pembroke, I need 15 minutes to verify the details and put together a complete picture. I will call you back with a full breakdown. You have my word." She hung up without waiting for a response and turned to Ethan. "Show me." He handed her the laptop with the spreadsheet pulled up. She scanned it, her jaw tightening with every line she read. "It's a billing code error," Ethan explained, standing beside her desk. "Someone input Tier 1 instead of Tier 2 back in March. Every invoice since then copied the same mistake because it was in the system." Vanessa swore under her breath. "Who approved these?" "Rachel signed off on the first one. After that, it went through automated processing. Nobody caught it because nobody was checking the code itself, just the totals." Vanessa stood, pacing behind her desk like a caged animal. "Pembroke's going to want a full refund. Cash. That's going to put us over budget for the quarter. Hastings is going to lose his mind." "Not necessarily." She stopped. "What?" Ethan pulled up another tab on the laptop. "If we frame it as a service credit instead of a cash refund, we can apply it to their next contract renewal. They were already planning to expand services. It's in the notes from your last quarterly review with them. If we offer them the credit plus a discount on the expansion package, we keep the relationship intact and offset the loss over time instead of taking it all at once." Vanessa stared at him. "Where did you get that idea?" "It's what I would want if I were them. They're not trying to burn the relationship. They just want to know we're not screwing them over. If we come to them with a solution that actually benefits them instead of just fixing our mistake, it changes the conversation." Vanessa's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. A recalibration, maybe. A grudging respect. "Pull together a proposal. I need it in 10 minutes. Include the credit breakdown, the expansion discount structure, and a timeline for implementation." "Got it." Ethan went back to his desk and started drafting. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Summary of the error, acknowledgement of responsibility without over-apologizing, proposed resolution with specific numbers, breakdown of how the service credit would work, the expansion discount terms. He kept the language simple, direct, stripped of corporate jargon, just honesty and a clear path forward. He sent it to Vanessa at the 9-minute mark. She called him into her office 2 minutes later. "This is good," she said, scanning the document on her screen, and she sounded genuinely surprised. "You don't have to sound so shocked." "I'm not shocked. I'm impressed. There's a difference." She looked at him directly. "I'm calling Pembroke back. Sit in on the call. If he asks a question I can't answer, you jump in. Clear?" Ethan's throat went dry. "You want me on the call with the client?" "That's what I said. Sit down." He sat. Vanessa dialed, putting the call on speaker. The phone rang twice before a man's voice answered, sharp and irritated and clearly done with pleasantries. "Vanessa, tell me you have answers." "I do, Mr. Pembroke. I'm here with Ethan Cole, one of our associates. We've identified the issue and put together a resolution proposal." "I'm listening, and this better be good." Vanessa walked him through the error, her voice calm and measured, never defensive. Pembroke interrupted twice, his frustration evident, but Vanessa didn't flinch. She acknowledged his concerns, validated his anger, and kept moving forward. When she got to the proposed resolution, she handed the conversation to Ethan with a nod. Ethan cleared his throat. "Mr. Pembroke, I know this is frustrating. If I were in your position, I'd be questioning whether we're the right partner going forward. But here's what I can tell you. We're not trying to sweep this under the rug or minimize what happened. We're owning it, and we're offering you a resolution that not only makes you whole, but positions you better for the expansion you were already planning." There was a pause on the other end of the line, long enough that Ethan wondered if the call had dropped. "Who are you again?" Pembroke finally asked. "Ethan Cole. I've been working on your account for the last few weeks." "And you found this error?" "Yes, sir." Another pause. "How long have you been with the company?" Ethan glanced at Vanessa. She nodded. "Tell him." 3 weeks, Ethan said. Pembroke laughed. It was short and incredulous and almost bitter. 3 weeks, and you're the one who figured this out. Unbelievable. "I had good information to work with, sir. Vanessa's been managing your account for years. She built the relationship and the foundation. I just caught the mistake." Vanessa," Pembroke said, his tone softening slightly. "Where the hell did you find this guy?" Vanessa allowed herself a small smile. "He's new, but he's learning fast." "Clearly." Pembroke let out a breath that sounded like some of the anger leaving his body. All right, send me the formal proposal. If the numbers match what you just outlined, we'll move forward with the credit and the expansion. I'll have it to you within the hour, Vanessa said. Good. And Ethan? Yes, sir. Tell Vanessa not to screw this up again. I like you. I don't want to have to fire your company because somebody in accounting can't read a contract. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, sir. See that you do. The call ended. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. For the first time since the crisis started, she looked like she could breathe. Ethan waited, unsure if he'd just saved his job or stepped on a landmine he didn't see. That was either very brave or very stupid, Vanessa said finally. Probably both. She almost smiled. Actually, almost smiled. Get out of my office. I need to draft the formal proposal and send it before Pembroke changes his mind. Ethan stood. Do you need help with? No, you've done enough. Go take a break. You look like you're about to pass out. He walked back to his desk, his hands still shaking from adrenaline. He sat down and stared at his computer screen without really seeing it. Lena appeared beside him 5 minutes later, her eyes wide. Did you just save the Pembroke account? How do you already know about that? Rachel's office is 2 doors down from Vanessa's. The walls are thin. Also, Vanessa sent an email to Hastings with you CC'd, which means it's officially a big deal. Lena perched on the edge of his desk. You're either getting promoted or fired. There's genuinely no in between here. That's comforting. I'm serious. What you did was risky. Going off script with a client like that, proposing a solution without clearing it with management first, that takes guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. You think I screwed up? I think you made a call that most people wouldn't have the courage to make. Whether it was the right call depends on whether Pembroke signs off on the proposal. She looked at him seriously. How do you feel? Like I might throw up. Lena laughed. That's how you know it mattered. That evening, Ethan picked Jamie up from school and took him to the park. They sat on a bench, Jamie eating a bag of chips, while Ethan stared at the playground without really seeing the kids running around. Dad? Yeah, bud. You're doing that thing again. What thing? The thing where you're here, but you're not really here, like your brain is somewhere else. Ethan sighed. Sorry. Work stuff. Is it bad? I don't know yet. I did something today that was either really smart or really dumb, and I won't know which until tomorrow. Jamie crunched a chip thoughtfully. Did you do something wrong? No? I did something right. I just don't know if other people are going to see it that way. Then they're dumb. Ethan smiled despite everything. It's not that simple, Jamie. Why not? If you did the right thing, then it's the right thing. It doesn't matter what other people think. In the real world, it kind of does matter what other people think, especially when those people are your boss. Jamie frowned, processing this. That doesn't make sense. If something's right, it's right. You'd think so. But sometimes doing the right thing makes people uncomfortable. And when people are uncomfortable, they get defensive or mad, even if you were trying to help. Jamie leaned against him, still working through the chips. Well, I think you did good. Ethan's throat tightened. He wrapped an arm around his son's shoulders. Thanks, bud. I hope you're right. On Monday morning, Ethan walked into the office at 7:50 and found Rachel waiting at his desk. His stomach immediately dropped. Mr. Cole, she said, her expression unreadable. Hastings wants to see you. Now? Now. Ethan followed her down the hall, his pulse pounding in his ears so loud he could barely hear his own footsteps. Rachel knocked on Hastings' door, then opened it without waiting for permission. He's here, she said. Hastings looked up from his computer. Come in, Ethan. Close the door behind you. Ethan stepped inside. Rachel left, pulling the door shut with a soft click. Hastings gestured to a chair. Sit. Ethan sat. His hands gripped the armrest so tightly his knuckles went white. Hastings leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled in front of him, in that way Ethan was starting to recognize as his thinking pose. Vanessa tells me you handled the Pembroke situation on Friday. Yes, sir. She also tells me you went off script during the client call, proposed a solution that hadn't been cleared through me or Rachel. Ethan's stomach twisted. I did what I thought was right in the moment, sir. That's not what I asked. Yes. I went off script. Hastings studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched until Ethan thought he might actually break. Then Hastings smiled. Good. Ethan blinked. Sir? I don't hire people to read scripts, Ethan. I hire them to think, to make decisions when there's no time to run it up the chain of command, to trust their instincts when the situation calls for it. Hastings pulled up something on his computer screen. Pembroke signed the new contract this morning. Expanded services, 18-month commitment, and he specifically requested that you stay on his account going forward. Ethan's mind went completely blank. He did? He did. Which means you just became Vanessa's unofficial second on one of our biggest accounts. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Hastings waved a hand dismissively. Don't thank me. You earned it. But don't get comfortable. This job doesn't get easier. It gets harder. The stakes get higher. The mistakes cost more. You ready for that? Yes, sir. We'll see. Now get out. I have a board meeting in 5 minutes. Ethan stood, his legs unsteady beneath him. Yes, sir. Thank you. He walked out of the office in a daze, barely registering his surroundings until he was back in the hallway. Lena was waiting, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed and a knowing smile on her face. Well, she said, are you fired or famous? Neither. Both. I don't know. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Pembroke requested me on his account. Specifically requested me. Lena's face broke into a wide grin. Are you serious? Yeah. She grabbed his arm, squeezing it. Ethan, do you understand what this means? You just proved you belong here. Not because someone gave you a chance or because you got lucky, because you earned it. I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. Nobody does. We're all just making it up and hoping it works out. She was beaming at him now, genuinely happy. This is a big deal. You should be proud. I'm mostly just relieved I didn't get fired. Take the win, Ethan. Seriously. You did something most people with 10 years of experience would have been too scared to do. They walked back toward the main office together. Vanessa was at her desk, typing with her usual rapid-fire intensity. She glanced up when they passed. Ethan, she said. He stopped. Yeah? Good work on Pembroke. It was possibly the closest thing to genuine praise he'd ever heard from her. Coming from Vanessa, it felt like a standing ovation. Thank you, he said. She nodded once and went back to her screen, already moving on to the next crisis, the next deadline, the next thing that needed her attention. Lena grinned as they walked away. That's basically a marriage proposal from Vanessa. Ethan laughed. I'll take it. That night, Ethan got home later than usual. Jamie was already asleep, curled up on the couch with his inhaler on the coffee table beside him, and Mrs. Kwan dozing in the armchair. A cartoon was playing on the TV with the sound muted. Ethan gently nudged Mrs. Kwan awake. She blinked up at him, disoriented for a moment. I'm so sorry I'm late, he said quietly. She waved him off, standing slowly and gathering her things. No trouble. He's a good boy. Ate his dinner, did his homework, took his medicine. No problems. Thank you, really. I don't know what I'd do without you. She patted his arm. You're doing good, Ethan. I can see it. Things are getting better. After she left, Ethan locked the door and turned back to Jamie. The boy stirred, blinking sleepily. Dad? Hey, bud, let's get you to bed. Jamie didn't argue, just let Ethan carry him down the hall and tuck him into his actual bed. Ethan brushed a hand over his forehead, cool, no fever, and made sure the inhaler was within reach on the nightstand. Love you, Dad, Jamie mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Love you too, Jamie. Ethan stood there for a moment, watching his son sleep, feeling the weight of the day finally settle on his shoulders. He walked back to the kitchen, pulling out his phone to check his messages. There was a text from Lena, sent 20 minutes ago. Pembroke just sent Hastings an email praising your work. You're officially not fired. Congratulations. Ethan stared at the message, then typed back, Thanks for the heads up, and for everything else. Her response came almost immediately. You did this, not me. Don't forget that. He set his phone down and opened the refrigerator, staring at the contents without really seeing them. There was leftover pasta from 2 nights ago, some vegetables that were probably still good, milk that needed to be used soon. He wasn't hungry, but he heated up the pasta anyway because Lena and Jamie and even Mrs. Kwan kept telling him he needed to eat more. And maybe they were right. While he waited for the microwave, he unfolded Jamie's note, the one that had been living in his wallet for weeks now, creased and worn from being handled so many times. "You're the best dad. You can do anything." For the first time since Jamie had given it to him, Ethan let himself actually believe it might be true. The next few days settled into a new rhythm. Vanessa started giving him more responsibility, not just shadowing and note-taking, but actual work, client emails he could draft himself, research projects that mattered, conference calls where his input was expected, not just tolerated. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was exhausting in a way that felt different from the night shift exhaustion, like he was building something instead of just surviving. On Wednesday afternoon, Vanessa called him into her office and closed the door. "I'm going to be out tomorrow and Friday," she said without preamble. "My mother's having surgery. I need to be there." "Is she okay?" "She will be, but I need you to cover the Pembroke check-in call Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Ethan's stomach flipped. "By myself?" "You'll be fine. It's just a quarterly touch base. They'll ask about the expansion timeline, you'll confirm the dates, you'll ask if they have any concerns. Standard stuff." She pulled up a file on her computer and forwarded it to him. "All the details are in there. Read it tonight, twice." "Vanessa, you can do this, Ethan. If I didn't think you could, I wouldn't be asking." She looked at him directly. "Pembroke asked for you. This is your chance to prove that wasn't a mistake." Thursday morning, Ethan arrived at the office at 7:30. He'd barely slept, too busy running through scenarios in his head, imagining everything that could go wrong. He reviewed Vanessa's notes for the third time, made his own notes on top of those, rehearsed his talking points until they felt natural instead of scripted. At 9:55, he dialed into the conference line. His hands were sweating. At 10 o'clock exactly, Pembroke joined the call. "Ethan," he said, his voice warm. "Good to hear from you. Where's Vanessa?" "Family emergency, sir. Nothing serious, but she needed to be there. She asked me to cover today's call." "Fair enough. You're the one I wanted to talk to anyway." Ethan blinked. "Sir?" "The expansion project. You put that proposal together, right?" "I did the initial framework, yes. Vanessa refined it." "Well, it's solid work. My team's on board. We're ready to move forward with the implementation timeline you outlined." Pembroke paused. "I wanted to tell you directly. What you did when you found that billing error, the way you handled it, that's the kind of integrity we look for in partners. Made me remember why we've stuck with Hastings and Grove all these years." Ethan's throat was tight. "I appreciate that, sir." "Really?" "Don't appreciate it. Just keep doing what you're doing. My company's growing, Ethan. I need people I can trust on the other end of the line. You're proving to be one of them." They spent the next 20 minutes going through logistics, timeline confirmations, resource allocation. Ethan took notes, asked clarifying questions, made sure every detail was locked down. When the call ended at 10:28, he sat back in his chair and exhaled for what felt like the first time in half an hour. Lena appeared at his desk 10 minutes later with 2 cups of coffee. "Heard the call went well," she said, handing him one. "How do you hear everything?" "I'm good at my job." She sat on the edge of his desk. "Pembroke's assistant emailed Rachel singing your praises. You're officially a rock star." "I'm officially going to have a heart attack if I keep doing this." "Welcome to client relations. This is just Tuesday for most people." Ethan laughed, taking a sip of the coffee. It was good, real coffee from the cafe down the street, not the office sludge. "You didn't have to get this." "I know, but you looked like you needed it." She studied him for a moment. "You know you're doing really well, right? Like, genuinely well. This isn't beginner's luck anymore. This is you being good at your job." "I don't feel good at it. Nobody does. That's the secret. We're all just faking it until we're not." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "You should take Jamie somewhere this weekend. Celebrate. You've earned it." "Maybe, if he's feeling okay. How's he doing with the new medication?" "Better. The flare-ups are less frequent. He's got more energy." Ethan smiled despite himself. "He asked me yesterday if we could go to the Science Museum. That's the first time in months he's asked to do something that requires walking around for hours. Lena's expression softened. That's great, Ethan. Really great. Yeah, it is. That Saturday, Ethan took Jamie to the Science Museum. They spent 4 hours wandering through exhibits, Jamie chattering constantly about planets and black holes and the physics of roller coasters. They ate overpriced pizza in the cafeteria, watched a planetarium show about Mars exploration, bought a small telescope in the gift shop that would probably never get used, but made Jamie's face light up. On the bus ride home, Jamie fell asleep against Ethan's shoulder, the telescope box clutched in his lap. Ethan looked down at his son and felt something shift in his chest, something that had been clenched tight for years finally loosening its grip. Things were getting better. Actually, genuinely better. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan let himself believe they might stay that way. The good streak lasted exactly 11 days. On a Tuesday morning in late November, Ethan arrived at the office to find the entire 19th floor buzzing with the kind of tense energy that meant something had gone very, very wrong. People were clustered in small groups, speaking in low voices. Phones were ringing unanswered. The usual rhythm of the office, organized chaos held together by routine, had fractured into something closer to panic. Ethan had barely set down his bag when Vanessa's office door slammed open. She stormed out, her face pale, her jaw set in a way he'd never seen before. "Conference room, now," she said, not stopping to see if he was following. Ethan grabbed his laptop and followed. Lena was already in the hallway, heading in the same direction. She caught his eye and mouthed, "No idea." The conference room was packed. Rachel stood at the head of the table, tablet in hand, her expression grim. Vanessa took a seat near the front. Lena and Ethan sat toward the back. 2 other senior associates filed in, followed by Hastings himself, which was when Ethan knew this wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Hastings closed the door. The room went silent. "At 6:47 this morning," Hastings began, his voice clipped and controlled, "we received formal notice from Meridian Systems. They're terminating their contract with us, effective immediately." The room erupted in whispers. Someone swore quietly. Ethan felt his stomach drop. "That's a $12 million account," one of the senior associates said, stating the obvious because someone had to. "I'm aware," Hastings said coldly, "which is why we're going to figure out what happened and how we fix it." "Rachel?" Rachel pulled up a document on the screen behind Hastings. "According to their legal team, we failed to deliver a compliance audit that was due last Friday. The contract has a penalty clause. If we miss critical deadlines, they have the right to terminate without notice and pursue damages." Vanessa's face went even paler. "That audit was my responsibility." "I know," Hastings said, his eyes fixed on her. "I submitted it on Thursday, 2 days early. I have the confirmation email." "Show me." Vanessa pulled out her laptop with shaking hands, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She turned the screen toward Hastings. He leaned in, squinting at the email chain, then his expression darkened. "You sent it to the wrong email address." The room went completely still. Vanessa's voice came out thin, strangled. "What?" "Their compliance officer changed departments 3 months ago. This email," Hastings tapped the screen, "went to his old address. It's been sitting in a dead inbox for 5 days." Vanessa stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. "I used the contact list, the one in our system, which apparently wasn't updated when he transferred." Hastings straightened, his hands gripping the back of a chair. "The audit never reached the right person. Meridian's legal team is claiming we failed to meet our contractual obligations." "I'll fix it," Vanessa said immediately, her voice cracking. "I'll call them right now. I'll explain." "There's nothing to fix," Hastings interrupted. "They've already signed with Kellerman and Associates. The contract's gone." "Then I'll resign." "No." Hastings' voice was sharp enough to cut. "We don't have time for resignations or blame. We have 24 hours to submit a response to their legal team explaining why they shouldn't pursue damages for breach of contract. If we can't do that convincingly, we're looking at a lawsuit that could cost us 3 times what the contract was worth." He looked around the table, his gaze landing on each person in turn. "I need solutions, not panic, not excuses, not someone falling on their sword. I need a strategy that keeps us out of court and preserves what's left of our reputation." You have until end of business today. Nobody spoke. The weight of what he was asking, what he was demanding, pressed down on the room like physical force. Ethan's mind raced. He thought about the Pembroke situation, about finding the error, about offering a path forward instead of just apologizing, about showing them evidence instead of just making claims. He raised his hand slowly. Every eye in the room turned to him. Hastings' expression was unreadable. Yes, Ethan? What if we prove the email was sent to the correct address at the time it was sent? Vanessa looked at him like he'd started speaking another language. What are you talking about? If their compliance officer changed departments 3 months ago, that means his old email address was still active and listed as the primary contact when you sent the audit. The system should have a record of that. If we can prove you used the correct contact information based on what was publicly available at the time, we can argue the failure wasn't on our end. It was a communication breakdown on theirs. Rachel leaned forward. That's a technicality. It's a defense, Ethan said, and it buys us time to negotiate instead of just accepting the termination in the lawsuit. Hastings studied him, his expression impossible to read. Can you prove it? I can try. I'll need access to Vanessa's email records and Meridian's public contact database history. You'll have it, Hastings said immediately. Then he turned to Vanessa. Work with him. Pull everything you've got. Email chains, meeting notes, any documentation that shows you were using the information they provided. Vanessa nodded, her hands still trembling slightly. Everyone else, Hastings continued, back to your desks. We're not losing this company over one mistake. Move. The room cleared in seconds. Ethan and Vanessa were left standing alone, the door swinging shut behind the last person. Vanessa looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. This is my screw-up. You could have just stayed quiet. Let me handle it. That's not how teams work. In theory, maybe. In practice? Vanessa's laugh was bitter. Most people would have thrown me under the bus to protect themselves. I'm not most people. Ethan picked up his laptop. Come on, we're burning daylight. They worked through lunch in Vanessa's office, the door closed, phones silenced. Ethan pulled every email Vanessa had sent to Meridian over the last 6 months, building a timeline of communication. Vanessa combed through her meeting notes, pulling together every interaction she'd had with their compliance team. At one point, Lena knocked softly and entered without waiting for permission, setting down sandwiches and water bottles. You need to eat, she said simply. We don't have time, Vanessa said, not looking up from her screen. Make time. You're no good to anyone if you pass out. Lena looked at Ethan. That goes for you too. After she left, Vanessa unwrapped her sandwich mechanically, taking small bites without tasting anything. Ethan did the same, his eyes never leaving his screen. There, he said suddenly, pointing. March 15th. Meridian posted an internal memo about departmental restructuring. It lists the compliance officer's new role, but doesn't update the main contact directory until April 2nd. Vanessa leaned over to look. So when I sent the audit last Thursday, the public directory still had his old email listed as primary contact. You used the information they provided. The breakdown happened on their side, not ours. That's still a thin argument. It's better than nothing, and it's true. Vanessa exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders for the first time all day. Okay, what else do we need? We need to show a pattern. If you've been using that email address for months and they never corrected you, it strengthens the case that the error was theirs for not updating their systems in time. I rotate between 3 different contacts depending on the issue type, Vanessa said, pulling up her sent folder. But compliance issues always went to Darren Mills, that email address. Until it wasn't his email anymore. Until it wasn't, Vanessa repeated quietly. They spent the next 2 hours building a comprehensive timeline. Every email sent to Mills over the past year. Every response received proving the address was active and monitored. Every instance where Meridian's own communications had used that same address, confirming it was their official contact method. By 3 o'clock, they had a document. By 3:30, they had a strategy. Lena appeared in the doorway again. Rachel wants to see what you've got. Conference room in 10. Ethan and Vanessa gathered their materials. As they walked down the hall, Vanessa stopped him with a hand on his arm. Thank you, she said quietly, "for not letting me drown. We're not done yet. I know, but still, thank you." In the conference room, Rachel sat with Hastings and two associates from the legal team Ethan had never met. They looked like they'd been pulled from other projects mid-crisis, tired and annoyed. "Show us what you've got," Hastings said. Ethan pulled up the timeline on the screen, walked them through the email history, the contact directory discrepancy, the internal memo that proved Meridian's systems hadn't been updated when they should have been. Vanessa filled in the context, explaining her communication protocols, showing how she'd followed every standard procedure. When they finished, one of the legal associates leaned back in his chair. "It's circumstantial. A judge might not buy it." "A judge might not have to," Ethan countered. "If we present this to Meridian's legal team before it gets to court, they'll see we have a legitimate defense. That changes the calculation. Suddenly, we're not an easy win. We're a protracted legal battle with uncertain outcomes. Most companies would rather negotiate than litigate if there's any doubt." The other legal associate nodded slowly. "He's right. This isn't bulletproof, but it's enough to make them think twice." Hastings was silent for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the table. Then he turned to Rachel. "Draft a formal response using this framework. I want it on Meridian's general counsel's desk by 7 a.m. tomorrow." "Understood." "Ethan, Vanessa, good work. But we're not out of this yet. Meridian could still dig in." He stood. "Everyone stay on call. If their legal team wants to negotiate, I want us ready to respond immediately." The meeting broke. Ethan walked back to his desk in a daze, the adrenaline starting to wear off and leaving exhaustion in its wake. Lena was waiting at his desk with a cup of coffee. "You look like death." "I feel like death." "You also potentially just saved Vanessa's career and the company $12 million in legal fees. So, there's that." Ethan took the coffee gratefully. "We won't know if it worked until Meridian responds." "True. But you gave them a fighting chance. That's more than they had this morning." She was right, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were one wrong move away from everything collapsing. He'd learned enough in the past 2 months to know that in business, nothing was certain until the ink was dry and the money was in the bank. That night, Ethan got home after 8. Jamie was already in bed, Mrs. Kwan snoring softly in the armchair. The TV was on, playing some nature documentary with the sound low. Ethan gently woke Mrs. Kwan and walked her to the door. "Long day?" she asked, gathering her things. "Very long." "You look tired, Ethan. Make sure you rest." "I will. Thank you." After she left, Ethan checked on Jamie. The boy was sound asleep, his breathing steady and even. The new medication was working. No wheezing, no labored breaths. Just normal, healthy sleep. Ethan stood in the doorway for a moment, watching his son, feeling the weight of the day settle on his shoulders. Then he walked to the kitchen, heated up leftover soup, and ate standing at the counter because sitting down felt like too much effort. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Rachel just sent the response to Meridian. Now we wait. Get some sleep." He typed back. "You too. Thanks for today. Anytime." Ethan set his phone down and stared at the soup, suddenly not hungry anymore. He dumped it in the sink, washed the bowl, and collapsed onto the couch without even changing out of his work clothes. The next morning, Ethan was at his desk by 7:30, coffee in hand, eyes gritty from too little sleep. The office had that early morning quiet, a few people scattered across desks, the cleaning crew just finishing up, the coffee machines working overtime. By 8, the floor started filling up. By 8:30, the tension was back, thick enough to cut. At 9:47, Rachel's door opened. She stepped out, her expression carefully neutral, and walked straight to Vanessa's office. Ethan watched from his desk, his heart hammering. 10 minutes later, Rachel emerged. She walked to Ethan's desk. "Hastings' office, now!" Ethan stood, his legs unsteady. He followed her down the hall, Vanessa falling into step beside them. Lena appeared from somewhere, joining the procession like she'd been summoned telepathically. In Hastings' office, the man himself stood by the window, looking out at the city. He didn't turn when they entered. "Meridian's general counsel called 20 minutes ago," he said to the glass. "They want to meet, in person, tomorrow at 10. Vanessa's breath caught. They're willing to talk? They're willing to listen. There's a difference. Hastings finally turned to face them. They saw the response. They know we have a case, maybe not a strong one, but enough to make litigation messy and expensive. They'd rather negotiate than fight, which means we have leverage. Not much, but some. What do they want? Lena asked. That's what we're going to find out tomorrow. Hastings looked at Ethan. You're coming to the meeting. Ethan's mouth went dry. Sir? This was your strategy, your defense. You're going to help sell it. I've only been here 2 months, and in those 2 months you've saved 2 major accounts and potentially prevented a catastrophic lawsuit. Stop underselling yourself. Hastings pulled out his phone, already moving to the next item on his mental checklist. Vanessa will lead the meeting. Ethan, you're her backup. If they push on the technical details, you respond. Clear? Clear. Good. Meeting prep starts at 2 this afternoon. Don't be late. They filed out of the office. In the hallway, Vanessa grabbed Ethan's arm. You're going to do great, she said, and for the first time since this whole crisis started, she sounded like she actually believed it. I've never done anything like this. Neither had I the first time. You figure it out as you go. She almost smiled. Besides, you'll have me there. If you start drowning, I'll throw you a rope. Lena walked with Ethan back to his desk. You okay? No, I'm terrified. Good. Means you're taking it seriously. She sat on the edge of his desk. You've got this, Ethan. I know you do. How do you know? Because I've watched you handle things that should have broken you and come out stronger. This is just another thing. A bigger thing, sure, but still just a thing. Ethan wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. So he nodded and turned to his computer, pulling up every file related to Meridian, every piece of documentation they'd assembled, every argument they'd constructed. He had 24 hours to prepare for the most important meeting of his very short corporate career. He wasn't going to waste a single minute. The rest of the day blurred together. The 2 o'clock prep session ran until 6. Hastings grilled them on every possible question Meridian might ask, every angle their lawyers might pursue, every weakness in their defense. Rachel played devil's advocate, poking holes in their arguments until they found ways to patch them. By the time Ethan left the office, his brain felt like it had been put through a blender. He picked Jamie up late from Mrs. Kwan's apartment, apologizing profusely. Don't worry, she said, waving him off. He's been good. We watched a movie about space. In the elevator, Jamie looked up at him. You look tired, Dad. Big day tomorrow. The important meeting? Yeah. You're going to do great. Ethan managed a smile. You sound very sure about that. That's because I am. Jamie said it with such absolute conviction that Ethan almost believed him. That night, after Jamie was in bed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, reviewing his notes one more time. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Stop working. Get some sleep. You're ready. He typed back, How do you know I'm still working? Because I know you. Go to bed, Ethan. He smiled despite himself, closed the laptop, and actually took her advice. The next morning arrived too fast. Ethan put on his best shirt, the one he'd bought specifically for important meetings after his first paycheck, and the tie Lena had helped him pick out last week because apparently his original tie looked like it belonged in a 1990s sitcom. He dropped Jamie at school early, hugged him a little longer than usual. Good luck, Dad. Thanks, bud. Remember, you can do anything. Ethan's throat tightened. I'll remember. At the office, he met Vanessa and Rachel in the lobby. They took a car service to Meridian's headquarters across town, a gleaming tower in the financial district that made Hastings and Grove's building look modest by comparison. In the elevator up to the 23rd floor, Vanessa turned to Ethan. You ready? No? Good. If you were, I'd be worried. She straightened his tie, a maternal gesture that surprised him. Just remember, we're not here to grovel. We're here to present facts and find a solution. Keep your head up. Okay. The elevator doors opened. They were led to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 3 people were already seated, a woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Jennifer Aldridge, Meridian's CEO, and 2 men in suits who were clearly lawyers. Aldridge stood and shook their hands, her grip firm and assessing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for meeting with us, Vanessa said smoothly. They sat. Aldridge got straight to business. I've reviewed your response. It's thorough, almost convincing. She leaned forward. But here's my problem. You're asking me to accept that a miscommunication absolves you of missing a critical deadline. That doesn't sit well with me. With respect, Vanessa said, we're not asking you to absolve us. We're showing you that both sides contributed to the breakdown. Your systems weren't updated. Our protocols relied on your information. The failure was systemic, not intentional. And yet the audit didn't reach the right person. That's the bottom line. Ethan spoke up before he could second-guess himself. Ms. Aldridge, can I ask you something? She turned to him, her expression neutral. Go ahead. In the 6 years Vanessa's managed your account, how many other issues have you had? There was a pause. None. Exactly, because she's good at what she does. Because she's built a relationship with your team based on reliability and trust. One communication error, one that happened because information wasn't properly updated on either side, doesn't erase 6 years of solid work. Aldridge studied him. Who are you? Ethan Cole. I work with Vanessa on your account. How long have you been with Hastings and Grove? Ethan met her eyes. 2 months? One of the lawyers laughed, short and derisive. Aldridge silenced him with a look. 2 months, she repeated, and you're here defending a contract worth $12 million. I'm here because I believe in doing right by people. Your company trusted us for 6 years. That trust was built on Vanessa's work, her consistency, her integrity. We made a mistake, a real one, but we owned it immediately. We didn't hide it, we didn't make excuses, and we came to you with evidence and a willingness to make it right. That's what partnerships are supposed to look like. The room went quiet. Aldridge leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming on the armrest. You make a compelling argument, Mr. Cole. I'm just telling you the truth. She looked at her lawyers. They exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. All right, Aldridge said finally. Here's what I'm willing to do. I'll put the termination on hold for 90 days. During that time, you'll resubmit the compliance audit, properly this time, and we'll evaluate whether the relationship is worth continuing. That's generous, Vanessa said carefully. But our team would need assurance that we're not just delaying the inevitable. If we're going to invest in rebuilding this relationship, we need to know you're actually considering keeping us on. Fair point. Aldridge pulled out her phone, tapped something quickly. I'm CCing you on an email to our legal team. It suspends termination proceedings and initiates a 90-day review period. If you meet every deadline, if communication improves on both sides, and if we see the same level of service we've had for the past 6 years, we'll renew, with updated contact protocols on our end to make sure this doesn't happen again. Vanessa's shoulders relaxed for the first time in 48 hours. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You've got 90 days to prove this was an anomaly, not a pattern. Don't waste them. They left the building 20 minutes later with a signed agreement in Rachel's bag and the weight of the world slightly lifted from Vanessa's shoulders. In the car back to the office, Vanessa turned to Ethan. That thing you said in there about partnerships and trust, where did that come from? I don't know. It just felt true. It was. And it worked. She looked out the window. You have good instincts, Ethan, better than most people who've been doing this for years. I still feel like I'm faking it. We're all faking it. You're just more honest about it. When they got back to the office, Hastings was waiting in the lobby. He took one look at their faces and nodded. Conference room. Debrief. Now. 10 minutes later, after Vanessa had walked him through the entire meeting, Hastings leaned back in his chair. 90 days, he said. That's a win. Not the win I wanted, but a win nonetheless. We'll make it work, Vanessa said. You better. He turned to Ethan. Good work in there. Aldridge doesn't impress easily. You did. Thank you, sir. Don't let it go to your head. You've still got 89 days to prove this wasn't luck. But he was almost smiling when he said it. That evening, Ethan picked Jamie up from school and took him out for pizza. Real pizza. From the good place, not the cheap chain. We're celebrating, he told Jamie. Did you win? Sort of. We didn't lose. That counts, Jamie grinned. I knew you'd do it. How did you know? Because you're my dad. You always figure it out. Ethan looked at his son across the booth, this small, brilliant, impossible kid who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself, and felt something settle in his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess I do." Later that night, after Jamie was asleep, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Heard it went well. Proud of you." He smiled and typed back, "Thanks. Couldn't have done it without your coffee delivery yesterday." Her response came quickly. "That's what friends are for. Also, you totally could have. But I'm glad I helped anyway." "Friends, huh?" A pause. Then, "Yeah, friends. Unless you want to grab dinner this weekend and see if we can upgrade that designation." Ethan stared at the message for a long moment, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. Then he typed, "I'd like that." "Good. It's a date, literally." He set the phone down, smiling like an idiot, and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, tangible, terrifying hope. And for once, he didn't try to talk himself out of it. The 90-day countdown started immediately. Vanessa treated it like a military campaign. Detailed timelines, daily check-ins, redundant verification systems for every piece of communication with Meridian. She wasn't taking any chances, and neither was Ethan. They rebuilt the relationship from the ground up, confirming every email receipt, double-checking every deadline, over-communicating to the point where Meridian's team probably found them annoying but couldn't accuse them of being negligent. The compliance audit was resubmitted within a week. This time, it went to 3 different contacts simultaneously, with red receipts enabled and follow-up calls to confirm delivery. Meridian's response came back positive. Thorough work, clear documentation, exactly what they needed. 1 hurdle cleared. 83 days to go. During that time, something shifted in the office. Ethan wasn't the new guy anymore. People started coming to him with questions, asking his opinion on client strategies, including him in conversations that used to happen without him. Vanessa started assigning him his own accounts. Smaller ones at first, low-stakes relationships where a mistake wouldn't cost millions, but real responsibility nonetheless. He still felt like he was making it up as he went. But he was getting better at faking confidence, at trusting his instincts even when his brain screamed that he had no idea what he was doing. The first Friday in December, Ethan's first full paycheck with benefits hit his account. He stared at the number for a solid minute, then called Jamie's doctor and scheduled the full treatment evaluation they'd been putting off for months. The appointment was set for the following week. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't have to choose between his son's health and keeping the lights on. That weekend, he took Lena to dinner. An actual date, not just grabbing food between crises. They went to an Italian place she recommended. Small, tucked away on a side street, the kind of restaurant where the owner knew half the customers by name. They sat by the window, candles flickering on the table, the city moving past outside in a blur of headlights and noise. "So," Lena said, twirling pasta around her fork, "how does it feel? 2.5 months in. Still think you don't belong?" Ethan took a sip of wine, cheap wine, but wine nonetheless, which felt impossibly fancy compared to his usual routine of tap water and instant coffee. "I think I'm starting to believe I can learn to belong. That's different from actually belonging, but it's progress." "It is progress, significant progress." She set down her fork. "You know what I've noticed about you?" "What?" "You don't make excuses. When you screw up, you just fix it. When you don't know something, you figure it out. Most people spend so much energy on blame and deflection that they never actually solve the problem." "I don't have the luxury of blame. I've got Jamie depending on me." "That's a pretty good motivator." "It's more than that." Lena leaned forward slightly. "You care about people. Actually care. Not in a performative way, not because it looks good on paper. You genuinely want things to work out for everyone involved. That's rare in this business." Ethan felt his face heat. "You're giving me too much credit." "I'm giving you exactly the right amount of credit. You just don't see it yet because you're still comparing yourself to some imaginary standard of perfection that doesn't exist." She smiled. "Nobody has it all figured out, Ethan. The people who look like they do are just better liars." "Is that what you are? A better liar?" "The best," she grinned. "But I'm getting better at being honest, too. You're a good influence." They talked for 2 hours. About work, about Jamie, about Lena's family back in her hometown, and the complicated relationship she had with success that felt like betraying where she came from. About Ethan's wife, Sarah, and how grief didn't follow any kind of schedule or logic. About the future in abstract terms because concrete plans still felt too fragile to speak out loud. When the check came, Lena grabbed it before Ethan could react. "I invited you," she said. "That means I pay. We could split it." "We could, but we're not going to." She handed her card to the waiter. "Next time you can pay. Deal?" "Next time?" "Don't play dumb. You know there's going to be a next time." Ethan smiled despite himself. "Okay, deal." They walked back toward Ethan's neighborhood, slowly, taking the long route, neither of them in a rush to end the evening. The December air was cold, but not unbearable, the kind of cold that made you walk a little closer together. At the door to Ethan's building, Lena stopped. "I had a really good time tonight," she said. "Me too." "Can we do it again? Soon?" "Yeah, I'd like that." She stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, close enough that his heart started doing something complicated and fast. She reached up and kissed him, soft and brief but real, grounding him in a moment that felt impossibly good after so many years of just surviving. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night." He watched her walk away until she turned the corner and disappeared, then headed upstairs feeling lighter than he had in years. Mrs. Kwan was on the couch, knitting and watching a cooking show with the volume low. Jamie was asleep in his room, the door cracked open just how he liked it. "Good date?" Mrs. Kwan asked, not looking up from her knitting. Ethan laughed quietly. "Yeah, really good." "Good, you deserve it." She set down her knitting and stood gathering her things. "That boy of yours is special, Ethan, and so are you. Don't forget that." "I'll try not to." After she left, Ethan checked on Jamie. The boy was sprawled across his bed, covers half kicked off, clutching his stuffed dog. His breathing was steady and clear. The inhaler sat unused on the nightstand. Ethan pulled the covers back up, kissed Jamie's forehead, and stood there for a moment just watching his son sleep. This kid who believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. This kid who'd carried hope for both of them when Ethan had run out. "I think things are going to be okay," Ethan whispered. "I think we're going to be okay." Jamie didn't stir. But Ethan felt the truth of the words settle in his chest anyway. The weeks blurred together in a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. Work was still hard, still demanding, still pushed him to his limits most days, but it wasn't drowning anymore. It was building something. He was learning, growing, becoming someone who knew what he was doing instead of someone desperately pretending. Vanessa started trusting him with more autonomy. She'd hand him client files and say, "Figure it out. Come to me if you get stuck." At first it was terrifying, then it became normal. Then it became satisfying in a way night shift work had never been. The knowledge that his decisions mattered, that his work had impact beyond just keeping things clean. 3 weeks into December, Hastings called him into his office. "Sit," Hastings said, barely looking up from his computer. Ethan sat, his mind immediately running through everything he might have screwed up recently. But Hastings' expression wasn't angry. It was thoughtful. "How much are we paying you right now?" Hastings asked. $35,000 base, benefits kicked in last month. And you're off probation in 2 weeks. "Yes, sir." Hastings finally looked at him directly. "Vanessa says you're ready for your own account portfolio. Full client management, not just backup work." Ethan's pulse spiked. "She said that?" "She did. She also said you're one of the fastest learners she's worked with in 15 years. Hastings leaned back. "I'm inclined to agree. So here's what's happening. When probation ends, you're moving to full salary. $55,000 to start. In 6 months, if you're managing your portfolio well, we bump you to 65 and start talking about senior associate track." Ethan couldn't find words. His brain had stopped processing language. "That work for you?" Hastings asked. "Yes. Yes, sir, absolutely." "Good. Don't make me regret it." Hastings turned back to his computer. "Now get out. I have actual work to do." Ethan stood, his legs unsteady. "Thank you, sir. Really. Thank me by doing your job well. That's all I want." Ethan left the office in a daze. He made it back to his desk and sat down, staring at his computer screen without seeing it. Lena appeared beside him 5 minutes later. You look weird. Good weird or bad weird? Hastings just offered me full salary and my own client portfolio. Lena's face split into a grin. Ethan, that's amazing. It's terrifying. It's both, but mostly amazing. She squeezed his shoulder. You've earned this, every bit of it. I don't feel like I've earned it. That's because you're still seeing yourself as the guy who was cleaning these offices 3 months ago. But that's not who you are anymore. You grew, you learned, you proved yourself. She crouched down so they were eye level. You get to be proud of that, Ethan. You get to let it be good without waiting for the other shoe to drop. He looked at her, this person who'd believed in him from the start, who'd pushed him forward when he wanted to retreat. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. Now let's get lunch. You're buying, future senior associate. They grabbed sandwiches from the deli down the street and ate in the small park 2 blocks from the office, sitting on a bench despite the December cold. Around them, the city moved at its usual frantic pace, but for a few minutes, everything felt still. Jamie's appointment is tomorrow, Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. The treatment evaluation? Yeah, the doctor said with the new medication and the therapy plan he's recommending, Jamie could be looking at normal lung function within a year. Maybe less. Lena turned to look at him. That's incredible. It feels impossible. 3 months ago, I was rationing his medication because I couldn't afford refills. Now he's going to get actual treatment, real treatment that might actually fix things instead of just managing symptoms. Ethan's voice cracked slightly. I didn't think this was something we'd ever be able to afford. But you can now. Because you took a chance. Because you walked through a door that terrified you. Because you held it open. I nudged it. You walked through. Lena finished her sandwich, balling up the wrapper. What are you going to tell Jamie about the promotion? I don't know. Part of me wants to wait until it's official. But another part of me wants him to know that things are actually getting better. That we're not just surviving anymore. Tell him he deserves to celebrate with you. That evening, after Jamie's homework was done and they'd eaten dinner, real dinner, not just sandwiches or instant noodles, Ethan sat down with his son at the kitchen table. Hey, bud, I need to tell you something. Jamie looked up from the drawing he was working on. Is it bad? No, it's good. Really good. Okay. Jamie set down his crayon, giving Ethan his full attention. You know how I've been working at the new job for a few months now? Yeah, the one with Lena. Ethan smiled. Yeah, that one. Well, my boss told me today that I'm getting promoted. More money, more responsibility. It means we're going to be okay, Jamie. More than okay. Jamie's eyes went wide. Really? Really? And your doctor's appointment tomorrow? We're going to do the full treatment plan. Everything he recommends. No cutting corners, no making choices about what we can't afford. Just getting you healthy. Jamie launched himself out of his chair and wrapped his arms around Ethan's neck. I knew you could do it, Dad. I knew it. Ethan held him tight, his eyes burning. You never stopped believing, did you? Never. Not even once. How'd you get so smart? I got it from you. Ethan laughed, the sound wet and rough. I don't know about that, bud. I do. Jamie pulled back, looking at him seriously. You're the best dad, and now other people know it too. The next day, Ethan took a half day off work to take Jamie to the appointment. The doctor spent an hour going through Jamie's history, conducting tests, reviewing scans. When he finally sat down with them, his expression was cautiously optimistic. The medication is working better than I expected, he said. Jamie's lung function has improved significantly in just 2 months. With the full treatment protocol, the new inhaler, the breathing therapy, the environmental modifications we discussed, I think we're looking at a very positive prognosis. What does that mean exactly? Ethan asked. It means Jamie can be a normal kid, play sports if he wants, run around without worrying about triggers, live without constant fear of the next attack. The doctor looked at Jamie. You might always have asthma, buddy, but it doesn't have to define your life. Jamie grinned. Can I try soccer? Let's get you stabilized first, but yeah, eventually soccer's definitely on the table. Walking out of the clinic, Jamie bouncing beside him talking about soccer teams and positions he might want to play, Ethan felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Not just hope, actual joy. The kind that didn't come with caveats or conditions, just pure, uncomplicated happiness. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Meridian just confirmed contract renewal. Full term, expanded services. We did it. Ethan stopped walking, reading the message 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. They'd done it. 90 days of paranoid overcommunication and meticulous attention to detail had paid off. The account was saved. Vanessa's career was intact. The company wasn't facing a lawsuit. He texted back, "That's amazing. Congratulations." Her response came immediately. "We both did it. Don't sell yourself short." Jamie tugged on his hand. "Dad? You okay?" "Yeah, bud, I'm great. Just got some good news from work." "More good news?" "Yeah, more good news." Jamie smiled. "See? I told you. Things are getting better." "You did. You were right." That Friday, the office had an early holiday party. Nothing fancy, just pizza and beer in the conference room after hours. Ethan almost didn't go, his instinct still to slip away and avoid social situations where he might not belong. But Lena grabbed his arm as he was packing up his desk. "You're coming," she said. Not a question. "I should get home to Jamie." "Mrs. Kwan's got him until 7. You told me this morning. Nice try." She tugged him toward the conference room. "Come on. You saved 2 accounts and got promoted. You're allowed to celebrate." The party was loud and chaotic in the way office parties always are. People talking over each other, bad music playing from someone's phone, the kind of forced fun that somehow became actual fun after about 20 minutes. Ethan found himself in a corner with Lena and a few other associates, listening to increasingly ridiculous stories about client disasters from years past. Vanessa showed up late, looking more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen her. She grabbed a beer and joined their group. "Meridian's official renewal came through this afternoon," she announced. 18 months, expanded terms, and Jennifer Aldridge specifically requested that Ethan stay on the account. The group erupted in congratulations and questions. Ethan felt his face heat as people clapped him on the back and made jokes about him being the company's secret weapon. "Speech," someone called. "No," Ethan said immediately. "Speech! Speech!" Vanessa was grinning. "Come on, Cole, say something profound." Ethan looked around at the faces watching him, colleagues who 3 months ago had been strangers, who'd watched him stumble and learn and occasionally succeed. Lena was smiling at him, her eyes warm. Vanessa looked proud in a way that made his chest tight. "Okay," he said. "Fine. But I'm keeping it short." The room quieted down. 3 months ago, I was working night shift maintenance in this building. I didn't think I had a shot at anything beyond that. I definitely didn't think I belonged in a room like this, working on accounts worth millions, making decisions that actually mattered. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But some people saw something I didn't see in myself. They took a chance. They pushed me. They didn't let me hide behind excuses about not having a degree or not having experience. And I learned something important. Your worth isn't about where you started. It's about what you do with the opportunities people give you. It's about showing up, working hard, and caring about getting things right. He looked at Lena. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Then at Vanessa. "Thank you for trusting me even when I hadn't earned it yet." And finally at the group as a whole. "Thank you for letting me prove I could do this. I'm not going to let any of you down." There was a moment of silence, then someone started clapping. It spread through the room until everyone was applauding, and Ethan felt simultaneously mortified and grateful in equal measure. Later, after most people had filtered out, and the conference room was littered with pizza boxes and empty bottles, Ethan helped clean up. Lena worked beside him, collecting trash and stacking plates. "That was a good speech," she said quietly. "I rambled." "You spoke from the heart. There's a difference." She tied off a garbage bag. "You meant what you said about people believing in you." "Of course I did." "Good, because I meant it when I said you earned this." She turned to face him fully. "You're not the same person who walked into that first interview. You've grown. You've become someone who knows his own value." "I'm getting there. Still have days where I feel like I'm faking it." "We all do." "But fewer and fewer, right?" He thought about it. About the panic he'd felt 3 months ago, and the confidence, tentative, fragile, but real, that he felt now. "Yeah, fewer and fewer." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, then walked out together. The building was quiet now, just the cleaning crew starting their rounds. Ethan felt a strange pang seeing them, a reminder of where he'd been, how far he'd come in such a short time. Outside, the December air was sharp and clear, the city lit up for the holidays. Lena pulled her coat tighter. "Walk me to the subway?" she asked. "Of course." They walked slowly, neither of them in a rush. At the subway entrance, Lena stopped. "I'm really proud of you, Ethan. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. What you've accomplished in 3 months is remarkable." "I had help, a lot of help." "Everyone has help. Not everyone uses it the way you did." She stepped closer. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "What are you going to do now? Now that things are stable? Now that Jamie's getting treatment and you've got the job and the salary? What comes next?" Ethan hadn't let himself think that far ahead. The future had always been about survival, about making it to the next paycheck, the next doctor's appointment, the next crisis. The idea of a future beyond that felt foreign. "I don't know," he admitted. "I haven't thought about it." "Then start thinking about it, because you've earned the right to have dreams again. Real ones, not just hopes that things won't fall apart." She kissed him good night, longer this time, more certain, and disappeared down the subway stairs. Ethan stood there for a moment, watching the city move around him, feeling the weight of her words settle somewhere deep. What did he want? Beyond survival, beyond just keeping Jamie healthy and the bills paid, what did he actually want for his life? The answer came slowly, piece by piece. He wanted Jamie to grow up without fear, without the constant worry that one medical emergency would destroy them. He wanted to be good at his job, not just adequate, but actually skilled. He wanted to build something with Lena, see where this thing between them could go. He wanted to stop feeling like an imposter and start feeling like he belonged. He wanted a life that was about more than just getting by. For the first time in years, that felt possible. On Christmas Eve, Ethan and Jamie decorated their small apartment with lights and a tiny tree from the discount lot. They made cookies using a recipe Sarah had loved, and Jamie talked nonstop about soccer and space and the science project he was planning for school. After Jamie was in bed, Ethan sat on the couch with a cup of coffee, looking at the tree lights and thinking about everything that had changed. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Merry Christmas Eve. Hope you and Jamie are having a good night." He typed back. "We are. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you too. See you Monday. Don't work over the holiday." "I'll try not to." "Ethan, yeah? You did good this year. Really good." He smiled, staring at the message for a long moment before responding. "We did good. Couldn't have done it without you. Team effort. Now go spend time with your kid." Ethan set the phone down and walked to Jamie's room. The boy was asleep. The telescope they'd bought from the museum months ago sitting in the corner, still in its box because they hadn't had time to set it up yet. "We'll set it up this weekend," Ethan whispered. "I promise." He stood there watching Jamie sleep, feeling the full weight of gratitude and relief and hope all tangled together in his chest. 3 months ago, he'd been a night shift janitor with no prospects and a son whose medical bills were crushing them both. Now, he had a career, a future, the promise of Jamie's health improving, and someone who looked at him like he mattered. It wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, more times when he'd feel like he was in over his head, but he'd learned something crucial over these past 3 months. He could handle it. He could learn, adapt, grow. He could be more than he thought he was. The turning point hadn't been the job offer or the promotion or even the salary increase, though those mattered. The turning point had been the moment he chose to walk through that door, despite being terrified. The moment he decided to try instead of accepting that people like him didn't get opportunities like that. Everything that came after, the success, the relationships, the stability, all of it stemmed from that single choice to stop making himself small. On Monday morning, Ethan walked into the building through the front door, badge already in hand, nodding to the security guard who now knew him by name. He took the elevator to 19, grabbed coffee from the good machine instead of the basement sludge, and sat down at his desk that now had his nameplate on it. Vanessa stopped by at 9 with a stack of files. "New client," she said, dropping them on his desk. "Tech startup, growing fast, needs someone who can scale with them. I think you're ready." "By myself?" "With oversight. But it's your account, your responsibility. She almost smiled. Don't screw it up. I'll do my best. Your best has been pretty damn good so far. Keep it up. At lunch, Lena joined him in the break room. They ate sandwiches and talked about weekend plans and Jamie's upcoming soccer tryouts in the spring. He's really excited, Ethan said. I've never seen him this energized about something physical. Usually he's all books and science kits. Kids surprise you. Just when you think you know who they are, they show you something new. Lena finished her sandwich. You should come over for dinner this week. I'll cook. You and Jamie both. You sure? Positive. I make a mean lasagna. Jamie will love it. Okay, yeah, that sounds great. They smiled at each other across the table, and Ethan felt that now familiar flutter in his chest. The one that said this was real, this mattered, this was something worth protecting. That evening, he picked Jamie up from school, and they walked home slowly, Jamie chattering about his day, about the book he was reading, about the friend he'd made who also liked space. Dad? Jamie said as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. Yeah, bud? Are you happy? Ethan stopped on the landing, looking down at his son. Yeah, Jamie, I really am. Good. You deserve to be happy. Ethan's throat closed up. He crouched down. You know what I realized? What? That note you gave me. The one that said I could do anything. You were right. I know I was right, Jamie grinned. I'm always right. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. Ethan laughed and pulled him into a hug. I love you, kid. Love you too, Dad. They went inside, made dinner together, did homework, watched a documentary about Mars that Jamie had been asking to see for weeks. And through it all, Ethan felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Contentment. Not the absence of problems or challenges, but the presence of hope. The knowledge that even when things got hard, they'd figure it out together. Later that night, after Jamie was asleep, Ethan pulled out the crumpled note that had lived in his wallet for months. He smoothed it out and read it one more time. You're the best, Dad. You can do anything. He'd kept it as a reminder during the hard days, the ones where he doubted everything. But looking at it now, he realized he didn't need it anymore. Not because the words weren't true, but because he'd finally started to believe them himself. He folded the note carefully and put it in a drawer with other important things. Jamie's birth certificate, Sarah's photo, the offer letter from Hastings and Grove. Evidence of a life that had been rebuilt from nothing. Proof that you could start over, that you could become someone different, that the person you were didn't have to be the person you'd always be. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Thursday night for dinner, 6:30? He smiled and typed back, Perfect. We'll be there. Ethan set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, other people were fighting their own battles, trying to survive, wondering if things would ever get better. He couldn't help them all. But maybe, by showing up every day and doing his job well, and raising Jamie to believe in himself, he was helping in some small way. Maybe that was enough. Maybe he was enough. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Ethan truly believed that. He turned away from the window and headed to bed, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. Because tomorrow wasn't something to fear anymore. It was something to build toward, something full of possibility instead of just obligation. And that made all the difference. The story of Ethan Cole wasn't about a dramatic transformation or a fairy tale ending where everything became perfect. It was about a man who learned that worth isn't determined by where you start. It's determined by whether you're willing to keep moving forward even when you're terrified. It was about discovering that the only real failure is giving up on yourself before anyone else has the chance to believe in you. Ethan had walked through a door he didn't think he deserved to enter. And on the other side, he'd found not just a job or a salary or stability, though those mattered immensely. He'd found proof that he was capable of more than survival, that he could thrive, that he could be the person his son already believed he was. And in the end, that was the real victory. Not the promotion or the account saved or the money in the bank. It was the quiet knowledge that when life knocked him down, and it would again and again, he'd get back up. He'd keep trying. He'd keep building. Because that's what you do when you finally understand your own worth. You stop waiting for permission to be enough. You just are. And Ethan Cole, former night shift janitor, current account manager, and full-time father, was finally truly enough.